What's up, everybody? Happy wedNESday. I'm Joe Granato, and we are going to start looking at how to use NESmaker. We're going to do a series of tutorials. They're going to show you how to use NESmaker to make various genres of games. And we figured a good place to start, since it is the 31st anniversary of The Legend of Zelda releasing in the US, would be to start with an adventure game tutorial. So by the end of this tutorial, you'll have a pretty decent grasp on how to go from zero information to creating a cartridge-based hardware playable adventure game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. All right, we got to dive right in because this is going to be a super long video. Now, we're going to break it up into sections, and what you're going to see down below is you're going to see the timestamps. So we want this all collected in one place, but if you just want to jump to a certain section that maybe you didn't understand or you want to pause for tonight and pick up tomorrow, you can pick up at the timestamp that you left off on down below. If you're watching this and you don't have NESmaker yet and you want to be a part of this, you want to create your own NES hardware playable cartridge-based game, please go to www.the8bitheroes.com, also linked below. That's where you can get it. And once you've gotten it, you can enter the activation code that'll come to your email. Please make sure if you're using a 32-bit operating system, you get the 32-bit version. And if you're using the 64-bit operating system, get the 64-bit version. Also notice, we are using 4.0.6. If you are not using 4.0.6, if your version says anything else, this may work different for you. And you might want to consult the forums at www.nesmakers.com at what changed in this version or in the version that you're using or whatever. Most of these should be able to be aligned with older versions, but it might take a little work under the hood. So please make sure you're using 4.0.6, which is the current version that's on the website right now. Okay, so last thing before we get started, please use NESmaker to create your own original work only. We all love the games that we grew up on, yes, but we want to protect their intellectual property, those intellectual property rights holders. Just like if you create a game, I'm going to defend you. So make sure that you're creating your own work. And plus, we want to see new games for the system. We want to see new experiences. That's kind of the point of the thing. So let's see your ideas rather than rehashing some other ideas. And let's use those as a source of inspiration to create our own games. So that said, let's make a game that was heavily inspired by The Legend of Zelda. So I'm going to assume that we know nothing, and we're going to just start creating from scratch. The first thing that we're going to want to do once we've opened a project is we're going to want to go to File, New. Now, you're going to be given this window right here, and you notice you have a couple of choices. One is use the existing tile sets. And what that's saying is, if we look at the folder structure here, you've got a folder called Graphic Assets, and these are the graphic assets right here. And the ones I'm looking at right now, these are the default tiles, the existing tiles right here. And notice they're all blank, they're all black. A game for NESmaker needs all these tile sets, and you're going to start filling in graphics for each of them. For instance, this is your monster tile set right here. This is your start screen tile set right here, all that. So the thing is, we don't actually want to use these, because once we use these, we're actually literally changing the defaults, the blank tile sets. So if you want to use the existing tile sets, and you're always going to start from a certain base, you're always going to start with a certain character. Okay, fine. You can change the existing tile sets, or you can create blank tile sets, or you can create a copy of, I'm sorry, these tile sets right here, these blank ones. Really the most common thing that I think that most people are going to do is they're going to go to create blank tile sets, and you're going to give it a name. Now, I've already created a game called Adventure, so I'm going to call this Adventure Tutorial. In fact, didn't we have a clever name? It was Advent Tutorial. I think that was actually the name of this game. So I'm going to hit OK. And you'll notice what happened in my graphic assets folder is I got a new folder called Advent Tutorial, and if I open it, it's those same files, but now they're blank. So when I'm actually changing the graphic assets, I'm changing these files. These first bunch are for background tile sets. This next bunch is for screen-specific tile sets. And then there's some game object tile sets and your HUD tile set, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go through and we're going to start creating graphics, but there's a lot more to set up before we get started. So I'm going to jump back here, and you don't really need to do too much over here unless I say to actually go exploring in your Finder. Most of the stuff that we can do, we're going to be doing here, but I'm going to jump back and forth to be showing you, what's going on under the hood. So, okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up our emulator. If we go to Project and we go to Project Settings, we're going to spend a lot of time in the Project Settings menu in these first couple steps. We're going to go to Emulator. Now, your emulator, you have a default emulator that comes with NESmaker. It's just a very, very simple emulator created by Shiru, who's an amazing, amazing asset to the community. He has created some really cool tools. We're actually going to look at a few of the tools that he created today as well. The emulator was only supposed to be for spot checking. It was never supposed to be a fully hyper-functional emulator. And so you can use it. If you don't put anything here in this field, it's going to use the default emulator. However, if you want to download a different emulator, you can actually use a different emulator. And the one that we suggest is FCEUX. So if you download FCEUX from the internet, you can navigate to it from your folder. And I've got mine here. I don't know where yours is going to be. I'm going to hit open. And then you need to point the folder in the direction of your game. So I'm going to find my game, which was in desktop, and I made a game called, what did I call it? There we go, NESmaker 4.6 Adventure. And then I need to navigate to Game Engine Data, game.nes. All right, so the game.nes file. Once I do that, this is the parameters that FCEUX needs, and now FCEUX is going to open when I export and test, and my game is going to open in it. And the reason FCEUX is so great is because it has some really cool debugging tools, and we'll look at those as we go as well. So if you want FCEUX, you can Google them, you can download FCEUX emulator, and then you can use it to help create your game. Okay, so now we have the emulator set up. I'm going to go ahead and save this project. I'm going to File, Save As, just like any other software, and it starts me at my root folder. I made a folder called Projects, and you can see I've already got a couple of projects in here. I'm going to go ahead and name this Advent Tutorial. You call it whatever you want. I would generally keep the name of the game that you're working on the same as the name of the graphic assets folder, just so you remember which one's which. It's not necessary, you don't have to, but that's what I would do. So I'm going to hit save, and now you can see Adventure Tutorial MSD is up the top. Incidentally, MSD stands for Mystic Searches Tool, because this whole NESmaker program started as a tool to help us create our game, Mystic Searches, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. Okay, so let's get started. We want to start by creating some colors. We need some color palettes. So let's start taking a look at the color palettes. And what you see is, if you look at the palettes, you have palette groups, and you have 64 palettes, 0 through 63. What we're going to do is we're going to make a basic adventure game. So we're going to have sort of overworld tiles, and we're going to have underworld tiles. So I'm going to add a palette group by right-clicking and hitting palette group. And I'm going to rename this palette group Overworld. And I'm going to right-click on palette groups, add a palette group, and I'm going to right-click and rename this Underworld. Now, this first palette, I'm going to rename this to Grassland, and I'm going to start making some changes. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put black in these first colors. You notice if you change one in the first color, they all change. We've gone over that in a lot of the tutorials. If you don't understand how NES palettes work, definitely go take a look at the Getting Started with NESmaker tutorials. We want to blaze through this stuff that we've already covered so that we can get to actually creating our adventure game. So I'm going to create a tile set. I may change this as I go. It just depends on what it looks like, but I'm going to use 2 colors of green and of brown to get started let's do light around, just so I can see the tiles that I'm about to bring in. Okay, so you can see it changed over here, it updated over here. If I right click on grassland, I'm going to assign it to my overworld, and you can see now inside the overworld group, we have the grassland palettes. Okay, so awesome, easy. The next thing I want to do is I want to start creating, I want to get into the pixel editor, and I want to actually start creating my background. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. And for those of you who have used the pixel editor, I want to show you a couple of new features that are really cool that some of you guys asked for. We are definitely paying attention when you ask. If you want to start creating graphics from scratch, you can go to pixel editor and you can make a new BMP, and you could actually make whatever size graphic that you need for your game. We are going to open up our first background tiles, and we're going to open that up. And what we can do is we can turn on grids. Generally, background tiles are 16 by 16, so usually we're going to be looking at that sort of blue grid line. Sprites are usually 8 by 8, so you can look at that yellow grid line. You can turn those off. You can also turn on the pixels if you need to see all the little pixels. Great. This is the hardest part to explain. I'm going to go over it real fast because we cover it in the getting started tutorials. To make graphics for the NES, we need to get it down to 4 colors. And you know, that's a really challenging thing to do when you're dealing with tile sets, you know, that you download or that you create in Photoshop or something like that, getting things down to 3 colors. And then the 3 colors are actually not colors at all. They're values. And those values are pushed through whatever is loaded in the palette. So when I'm drawing, if I draw with the first color, I get red. But what I'm actually getting is this color green right here, because the first color, which is drawing as red, is going to be translated through the palette into this first color, whereas the second color is green, and that's going to be translated to a dark green, and the third color, it looks like a really pretty rose, look at that, is brown. And by the way, creating a rose right here, that was totally an accident. That was a bunch of scribbles. So that's kind of neat. Anyway, but you can see the last color here gets translated, the blue gets translated through this last color here. So whatever you draw is the last color. Now, you can actually use this mode if you want. So if you want to see it through the sub palette that you've got, you can. Or sometimes it's easier if you're, especially if you're trying to pull in an existing tile set and change the colors, sometimes it's easier to look at the red, green, blue format. And the reason red, green, blue, we need 4 values: black, red, green, blue. That made it really easy for us to import a bitmap file, get it to those 4 colors, and then export the CHR file, which is what the NES actually needs when you're actually exporting to a game. All right, so if I were to save this right now, which this is obviously, I don't know if I want a rose in my game, but whatever, it would look like this in the game if I had this palette loaded. If I look at my graphic assets, and you don't have to look at this, but if I look at my adventorial, you'll see my background character here shows that rose, and it's going to pop up in just a second. Sometimes it takes a little while to pop up here. I don't know why. Okay, there it is. So that's the rose. That's the actual red, green, blue file, and that's what's actually loading in my game, and that's what I can start making tiles out of. All right, so I'm going to scrap that. I'm going to create a blank main tile set, and I can actually save that over the top. And that's basically like erasing it, and I'm getting this now. So I'm going to show you a couple of tricks. Real easy. What you can do is if I turn on my 16 by 16 grid, this right here is where I want to draw a certain color. I can get a rectangle tool and get green. And if you're in this mode, it would be red. It's the first color, and the first color is green. So I would go, bam, there. So I've got grass now. I've actually got a grass tile. It's really drawing red, but when I translate it through this palette, it's going to be drawing it green. If I really want to make it a little bit nicer, I might add some pixelated dots. You could even use you can use 4 tiles if you want to get detailed, but this is all you have for your main tile set. So it might be better to be redundant graphically rather than run out of space for more assets. So we have that. Now, one of the things that we had going on was selection, and selection is kind of hard to get exactly right, especially copying and pasting. So we added this new tool, which is a new tool which actually copies the entire tile. And if I copy this with Control C, and I just hit Control V, you'll see it pastes it wherever my mouse is. And some people were having trouble getting it lined up exactly right. Like some people were like, why didn't that line up exactly right? Or too high, like they were trying to do it here and they did this and it's too high. Okay, so if you hit Control Shift V, no matter where you are in that tile, it will paste to the top corner of that tile. It'll lock it to the top corner of that tile. So that's a really cool new feature that was actually suggested by the community that we've adopted for this version. All right, so this is basically how we make tiles. I'm going to show you real quick how to import tiles and get them into form. So I'm going to go to Open. Let's take a look at some beta assets that we have, graphics. We're not actually going to use these, but real quick, I'm going to just pull in tiles for a second, and I'm going to copy. I'm going to use my my tile selector there. Control C. Okay, now I've got that copied. That's now copied into my clipboard. In fact, Josh has just made it so that if you're in an external tool like Photoshop and you copy something, it still is in the clipboard. So you can actually create a new main tile set, and you can paste that in like this. So Control Shift V will paste it right to the corner like that. And awesome. Now notice it's not these colors. That's because it's trying to tell you these are no good. These colors are not good. If I turn to red, green, blue, they should turn to black, red, green, blue. Because they don't, that lets you know these are no good. In fact, we have this little control here, which is show bad pixels. If I click that, they're all still showing because they're all bad. So what we might want to do is we might want to see this two tones of green, I don't know, light green and dark green, or maybe a second palette, and it would be green for the grass, but it would be stone, so it would be light gray and dark gray. Okay, so let's do that. So what I want to do is black is fine. Black is still coming in as black. However, I want to make this lighter color light gray by using the global color change tool. And that looks like, oops. That looks like this. And I want to make the brown dark gray like that. Now, if I look at my black, red, green, blue, you can see it's translating the top through the second color, which is this one here. And it's translating the bottom here through the third color, 0, 1, 2, 3. It's translating the bottom through the third color, which is here. So 0, 1, 2, 3. And that's why we're seeing when I look at red, green, and blue. If I translate it through the actual sub palette, it looks like a brick. Awesome. So that's how I can load in and start manipulating graphics. And also, you've got your standard drawing tools. You can zoom in and actually start drawing something. Like if I wanted to make a little smiley face or something, I could go like this. Get the idea. I'm not going to spend much time actually creating graphics here for you guys. I'm actually going to load in some pre-existing assets. So just made a smiley face. Line tool, if I wanted to make a stick figure. Hooray, stick figure man. Okay, so that's how I can create graphics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually load in my first tile set. I'm going to encourage you to use the beta assets. You can actually open a tile set or create your own. And I'm going to show you the assets that we're going to end up using. If I go to my adventure game, I'm going to actually load in the CHR for the adventure game, and I'm going to conform it to colors. So I know that in this, yep, that looks right. This looks right, other than I want, let's see, what color do I want the top of that? White. Yeah, so that would be my block. This would be a broken block. That's the stairs. And this is sort of my overworld. And I've got that. I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save it over my background character 00. Okay, so what you want is you want at least a ground tile, you want a tree or a bush or a stone or something solid, and you want a smaller solid, and you want something that equals a warp of some type. So I'm going to let you sort of figure that out. If you want to load mine, I think they're going to be loaded in a beta assets folder for you guys. They're not there now, but they should be when I load up this tutorial. All right, so this is what my blocks will look like. This is what my tree will look like, and we're good. And we just saved all the changes by going to save as, and you can see in my Advent tutorial graphics, the red, green, blue file is right here. Now that we've added some color and we've learned how to add some background graphics, before we actually get into creating the game whatsoever, we want to add the project module. Now, you could start creating a game without loading a project module, and that's fine, except if you go to your project settings and you go to script settings, there's only a few scripts defined. So this is the place where most people get really excited and they try and start creating stuff, and they go to export and test, and they run into a whole series of errors, and it says missing files and missing references and all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay, this is why you didn't load a module, so it doesn't know where to point all the scripts to. We are right now working with an adventure game module that I've created just for this tutorial set. You can still make all kinds of modifications and changes, so when you're going around this tutorial and you're saying, man, I wish I had a monster that did this, you can still make that happen. This is just the base. Or, man, I wish my power-up behaved this way. Yes, you can make those changes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Project, Import Module, and for you guys, you're going to see at your root folder, you're going to see modules. You're probably just going to see adventure module. I'm going to use my adventure module 4 because I've made a few iterations. So I'm going to hit open, and it's going to ask, what do you want to import to this module? And I want to import everything. So I just went and checked down everything, and this tells you exactly what it's loading, and I'm going to hit OK. And it doesn't look like much happened, but now if I go to project settings and I go to script settings, look at all the defines. All this stuff is defined. So let's take a look at some of the new stuff that was defined. If you try and load an old version of your game into this version of NESmaker using this module, you're probably going to have some issues. Even if you don't use this module, I've changed some of the underlying code to support some more of these sort of references. So if I look, I can see all of my tile collisions here are set up. All of my AI is set up. My power-ups are all set up. I have a whole bunch of physics scripts and what happens if you die, what happens when the timer goes off, what happens when the players hurt, when the monsters hurt, dropping items, gamepad read, all this stuff. So all of these things, there's a ton of information happening right now. And not only that, but I also get my tile types are named in a way that these are named. So these labels here define these tile types here. The AI right here is defined by this AI right here. And some other things like some of the variables that this module in particular uses. The flags on the screen for monsters, for monster steps. For instance, in this module, one of these bits is set to monsters won't recoil when they're hit. So if you had like a statue that was shooting at you, it was behaving that way, but it wasn't supposed to move when you hit it, you could put there's no hurt recoil. This bit might do something completely different in an adventure game or a puzzle game or a beat 'em up. But for this module, I've got it set to do this. And in my code scripts, in these code scripts, it references that when it needs to know, hey, don't recoil this monster. Okay, so that's what adding the module did. And now when I go to, say, graphics banks and I go to assets and I look at my drop-down list, these are already assigned to the codes that they say they are. That's what I did when I created the module. You could now add more, or you can change what these do, or you could change what these say or what they're called. I'm going to suggest, because of the way that it works with the particular code underneath, you leave these completely alone and just work with me through this tutorial, and hopefully over the course of the next couple of tutorials you get a better idea of what's actually happening and you can start making modifications. That's the goal. That's the idea. So let's make a new asset. And what an asset is it's the graphics, it's the collision, it's the color data. Now it's not actually saving the color data. It's not saving a bitmap or something. It's saving the reference to the sub palette. So for instance, if I make a new asset with this sub palette, whatever colors the screen has loaded into the first slot, that's what it's going to look like. If I save an asset with the second subpalette, whatever colors the screen has loaded into the second slot are what colors it's going to show as. So I'm going to assume I'm going to make a screen using this overworld subpalette palette group, and I'm going to create a new asset that is going to be of null walkable tile type, which means it's just walkable. I can walk right over it, and I'm going to call this ground, and I'm going to save it. And you're going to see over here that it shows up in assets. Now, you'll also probably notice that I still have save new. And the reason that I do that is I can start making new assets rapidly. And it's now creating new assets, and I could have changed the tile type of the color. So like if I wanted to do this, I want to create ground 2, and then like, oops, and then I want to like call this one snow ground and save it. You can see how fast I can rapidly go through creating assets. I don't want to do that right now. But if I did, I could. It's really quick to make a lot of assets. If I want to make a new asset, I click on assets folder, and now I'm creating a new asset like this. Hello. And you can see hello gets saved. If I want to change the ground for some reason, you'll notice it still says save new. That means if I'm doing things, even though I'm looking at the same tile, I'm actually making a new asset. If I want to change the ground, I click on ground, and now I'm on that asset. You can see it doesn't say save, it says update. And that's how I know that I'm working on this current asset. To get back to creating new assets, I just go to assets, click, and go to save new. Okay, so let's delete this. We got ground. Let's make a 2x2 tile. And I'm going to make a tree. And I'm going to make sure that all of the pieces of this tree are solid. And this is kind of cool because you can actually make a asset that has different, so if you can make like a bigger tree that's got a hole in the middle, and the hole in the middle is the warp, and all around it's solid, and that's just one giant asset. I don't know why that happened, my bad. I was still clicked on grass, so update assets, sorry. Okay, so the next thing I want is a tree. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make each quadrant of this solid. And you can make each of these a different collision type. And that's kind of nice because if you wanted to make like a giant tree that's got a hole in the middle that you can go into, you can make all the outside solid, but the middle one you can make a warp or something. And then that whole thing could be an asset without you have to individually placing each piece of it. So I'm going to call this tree. Save new. And let's see, I've got a staircase right here. Oh, 1 by 1 staircase, and I'm going to use the second subpalette for that, and I'm going to use the warp to screen type for that. I'm going to call it stairs. I'm also going to make a block. What's that color? And that's going to be solid. And that's all I'm going to do for right now with this. So, okay, so we've got those. Actually, you know, I'm going to add one more. I'm going to call this breakable block break. I'm going to save that. So now I've got a bunch of different tiles that I can paint the screen with. And that's how you create assets. Very simple, very easy. And if you needed to, say, edit this graphic at all, I could go into edit. And this opens up a little spot checking graphics editor. You load the palette that you want. You get the color that you want. So let's say I just wanted to add a little bit more crack to this. And then I was like, oh, you know what? Let's get rid of that like that. Great. So now I have, and I'll ask if you want to update, and there you go. So that's a way I could spot check without having to open up the entire tile set. And great. And I don't have to do any changes. I don't save it. I was editing that one. Great. I'm going to go to Overworld. And here's where you can start working with your screens. So I'm going to just pick a screen. I'm going to make sure I'm in bank 1. And you'll notice you have 3 graphic banks. You're going to choose which graphics bank your screen uses. And this is my first screen. And you notice it went ahead and drew what was in the first asset spot. So it went ahead and created a screen with 0 tile type, which is this guy. So there you go. And now in order to place assets, I can click on an asset and just drop it in. That simple. So very easy to start creating screens with NESmaker. Now this is a problem. I can't get over far enough. I really want to. What I could do is I could hit Shift, and you'll notice it changes the handle. If I hit Control, it changes the handle vertically. If I hit them both, I get the bottom corner. So I want to hold Shift so I can get sort of in there. There. Okay. So now I've got sort of like this entry to a forest here. And this is all good and everything, but I'm not going to use this space because I'm going to use a HUD at the top of my screen. So before I do anything else, let me set up the gameplay area and the HUD area so I know what part of the screen that I actually need to be drawing. I'm going to go to HUD and boxes. And what I'm going to do is, if I go back to my map, I'm sorry, I know that was 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4, 5. If I go to my HUD boxes, I can look at 4, 5, and I can see the screen as a reference. So as I figure out how big to make my HUD, and I'm going to make my HUD this big, and I'm going to set my HUD area, and I'm going to make the gameplay area the rest of the screen. Now, I might advise you to keep your playable area here instead of here. Most TVs will cut off the bottom part of this screen, and so this is a way, like, if your monsters will be like half on the screen, you'd have to walk off the screen to get to the edge. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and put it here, and I'll put it here. That's fine. Playable area is there. I also want to set up a text box area, and this is where my text boxes will appear. And there's some general rules to this, but we'll set one up and we'll look and see if things go wrong. And then my monster spawn area. And what the monster spawn area is if I make a randomly placed monster, I want to know it needs an area in which to place it. Now this is game wide; it's not screen specific or anything. However, what you can do with this is make sure that if you enter the screen, you'll end up on this first row or this first row or this first row or this first row. And you don't want a monster to spawn on top of you on the edge. So you might even want to bring that in even further so that this is where the monsters will spawn. It's totally up to you and the design of your game and the way that your monsters function. But when you choose random, it'll only go anywhere inside that box. If you choose to place it, you can place it anywhere you want. But if you choose random, it'll use that box. And the other one is not really used right now. Okay, so we've set up a couple of boxes. We set up a HUD, playable area, text box area, monster spawn area. Go back to my overworld, and I can see I don't need anything above this. This is actually off the screen. I don't need any of that. So this is the edge of this screen. This is all blank area right here. What I want to do now before I test it, I do want to test it, but I've set up some defined sound effects and music to play, and I want to make sure that I bring that in, because if I don't, it's going to give me an error, and it's going to say, hey, I don't know what songs you're talking about. Now, eventually, we're going to have a song picker and a song composer and things like that right here in the tool that you can easily pick. For right now, though, let's use the one that I know will work with this engine. So if I go to sound, I can right-click on sound, import FamiTracker text. And I'm going to navigate to beta assets, music. And I've got a few choices. I've got adventure music and sounds. I've got John Lasher adventure and inverse phase music sound effects. And I've got Patricio Pereira adventure and inverse phase. These were created by backers. These were created by people who support the project just today, and they're really awesome. So I'm going to load up John's real quick. And you're going to see now I have music and sound effects. And this is what would break the tool if you didn't load this, because I have things like when you run into a monster, it plays the hurt sound effect. But if it doesn't have a certain hurt sound effect, it doesn't know what to play. Again, in a future version, that's one of the updates coming soon, that these all default to 0, and then you'll be able to set them to whatever sounds are loaded. You could also create your own sounds and your own songs, of course. We do have a way to play these. However, this is not very reliable right now. Sound effects is way off. So if you want to hear, I would advise testing them in game. So if I go back to my overworld, now that I've got my songs loaded in, I'm going to do a couple of things. I want to test this screen. I'm going to right-click, place player. That's going to start my game on this screen I just created. Now, I haven't created a player yet, so nothing's going to appear, but it'll start me on the screen, and I can actually see the screen and the tiles I set up. I'm going to do a project, info, skip start screen. And the reason I'm going to do that is I haven't set up a start screen. I haven't set up an input for my start screen. I won't have any way to get past the start screen. I just want to test this screen. So if I go to test, export and test, now I've got that screen. For now, I'm going to actually take my sound and turn it way down. Okay. So I've got this is my start screen, doing good. And you can see I can hit buttons. You can see down here my buttons. They don't do anything, but that way you can see what it is that I'm doing. All right. So that's the basic first part about setting up the HUD, setting up some assets, and painting some assets to the screen, and then getting the music in so that it can line up with the module, and finally testing the game for the first time. So once we've got the screen set up, obviously we want to see our player in the game. We want to start getting him able to move around and things like that. So what we want to do is we want to go to game objects, and you can see that the game objects already have names, and understand that these names are malleable. This is not necessarily what they mean. This is just what, these are default names. So this doesn't necessarily have to be melee, or this doesn't have to be a projectile source. This doesn't have to be a key pickup. These don't have to be effects. And in fact, we're going to change the names to a bunch of these. But that's just to give you an idea of the types of things that are game objects. The difference between game objects and monster objects is this. Game objects are all on this tile set. This tile set is always loaded throughout your game. As you go screen to screen, this tile set is still loaded. As you go screen to screen, though, your monster tile sets will end up swapping out. So you move to a new screen, you might have different monsters, right? But you'd still have the same coin or the same power up or the same health pickup. So those would all be on your game objects. When you slash your sword and hit something, that same effect is going to show up. That's going to be in your game objects. Monsters, however, that could change from screen to screen, they're going to be in your monster setup. That's really the only difference. Other than that, how to create them, how to set them up is pretty much exactly the same. And we're going to set up our player. I'm going to give you the basics, and then I'm going to load in my pre-existing player, and I'm going to show you some of the settings. So here's my player. You can see I've got no graphics. Again, I'm going to load in the graphics that I've already created very easily. So I'm going to go to Pixel Editor. I'm going to open up my old version of this, which is in Adventure Game. You are going to have this in your beta assets folder. I'm going to load in my game object tiles, and I'm going to save this to my adventure tutorial over the top of game object files. Now you could create game objects and monsters the exact same way that you created your background. So this right here is, you can see the pixels, you can see this. Now this is something new. You don't just have background palettes to look through. Now you can look at object palettes as well. And what we're going to do right here is we're going to set up a player object palette. I'm going to rename it. Now that's the first object palette. And if I look at this through the object palette, now I can see what my player is going to look like translated through this palette. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make his exterior sort of the shadow color, and this a skin tone. And I actually like that red for him. So this is going to be what my player looks like in this. Actually, let's make him like a, yeah, like that. I like that for the player. All right, so this is what my player looks like, and this palette is now actually in the game. It's not just a dummy palette, which in previous tutorials I always said make a dummy palette. Now you don't have to. So okay, let's go back to my player, and now you can see my tile set. I've actually got the player graphics loaded in there. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create some things here, and then I'm going to load up my guy and show you how I did it, because it takes a long time to do this, and I don't want you sitting watching me. First of all, I want to make some animations. So I'm going to manage my animations. I'm going to make one called idle down. Then I'm going to make one called idle left. I'm going to make one called idle right. I'm going to make one called idle up. So I've got idle up. So I'm going to have my guy standing still, facing downwards, right, left, and up. And I can determine the width and height of this player, and I can start putting in graphics. So him standing downward is going to look like this. It's only one frame of animation, so there's only one frame to choose. If I did make him have 2 frames of animation, you can see I could pick a second frame. So if I had like a breathing frame or something like that, maybe my breathing frame would be and then it would look like this. Now that's not what I want, so I'm going to actually get rid of that frame. So it's only one frame for idle. And then for left, actually I'll do right first. For right, for idle, I would want it to be this guy. And what's fun is, once I have one, I can copy this frame, go to idle left, paste it, and flip it. Now I've got idle left, and I can do the same for idle up and use this one. So you get the idea. And that's how I can make different animations. And if I had multiple frames, I could get the different frames for the second frame of that animation, etc. So I'm going to make a bunch of different animations, and I'm going to make a bunch of different stances. I'm going to have idle. I'm going to have walk. I'm going to have attack, and I'm going to have a little victory graphic that's done by this one. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to have you guys do that. You guys have some fun with that. I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to load a game object. Oops. Monsters. And I have player. And this has gone ahead and it has loaded all of my graphics. So if I look at my walk left, I can look at my 2 frames of walking animation. If I look at my attack up, I can see I'm holding my sword upwards, etc. So once you create an object, you can actually save it and load it back in. And as long as the tile set matches, then it'll look the same. I'm also going to look at my object details, which have come in with this object that I saved. What you're seeing here is we made a bunch of animations. We made a standing, a walking, attacking, and a victory. And we made basically 4 for each, 1 for each direction. What we're doing now is we're saying, okay, there's different animation types. We just talked about them. They're idle, they're walk, they're attack, they're victory. Now, again, idle standing had 4 different animations because we had 1 for each direction. Attack had 4 different animations because we had 1 for each direction, etc., etc. But there's still only 4 types. There's standing still, there's walking, there's attacking, and there's victory. So with each of these, I say, okay, for idle, I want stand right, stand up, and stand left. For walking, I want, this is where I get to choose from all the animations I made. Walking, walk right, walk up, walk left. Attacking, I get to choose attack down. Now, I'm not using the diagonals, which is why I'm skipping over them. And victory, they are also in victory. So you need to make for each type of animation, you need to make an animation type, and then you need to set the different directions to that type facing that direction. I go to details. This is where I get some details about my player. Now, first of all, I want only my player to be persistent and player. Make sure that persistent and player are selected for your object. What persistence is that every time you load a new screen, all of the objects go away so that it can load the new objects in their slots. The thing is, though, you don't want your player to go away. The player is the one object that's going to consistently be in the game from screen to screen. So you need to set it to persistent, and you're going to set it to player type. And these right here help handle collision. So when a player runs into a monster, certain things happen. When a player weapon runs into a monster weapon, certain things happen. When a target runs into a monster, certain things happen. Or when a player runs into an NPC, certain things happen. So these are just ways to define which type of object this is and which type of object the monster is or the object it's running into is, and then that helps the collision scripts know what to do in that situation. You can set your health right here. You can set your speed and your acceleration. If you want it to be floaty, like in water or on ice, this would be really slow. If you want to just start right up, you want this to be fast. Some modules use jump speed. This one doesn't. And you don't have to worry about solid or edge collisions for this guy. If I go to actions, what we need to do for the player, and this is just the way that this module is set up, is that for action step 0 is idle. Action step 1 is walk and give it animation speed. 2 is attack, and at the end of attack, at the animation, it's going to go to first, and you need to give it an animation speed. And 3 is victory, and it doesn't do anything, and I think those are the only states. So again, for action step 0, we're going to make it idle. You have all your choices. That's where this comes into play. Action step 1 is walk, and you're going to make sure to give it an animation speed, and this will be how fast your character walks. Action step 2 is going to be attack, and at the end of the animation, it's going to go to idle. When it's all done, it's going to go to idle, and you need to make sure to give it an animation speed, otherwise it'll never animate, and it'll never go back to idle. It'll just stay on attack forever. And lastly, victory just loops, doesn't do anything. Okay, and then we want to set up a bounding box. And you can see where I set up mine. I don't like to give my whole character a bounding box. I like it to be more like Zelda, where, you know, if you walk up against a brick, it kind of has a 2.5D feel to it. It kind of feels like it's got a little bit of depth. And you definitely don't want to do something like this, where you go, oops, I was off the corner there, where I go from corner to corner, because then it'll be really hard to get in between blocks. So I stick to something like this, and that also is very fair for the player as far as collision. It's actually almost like cheats for the player. So now I've got a player. I don't have to hit save, but if I want my image to update, I hit save. And now I've got a player. Now he doesn't do anything. He just stands there. I haven't given him any, I haven't set any controls or anything like that. But if I go to the overworld, and I can see my player is still placed there, I go to test, export, and test. Now what I'm going to get is my player is going to appear on the screen facing downwards. That's his default. So, and there we go. Player is on the screen facing downwards. Awesome. So that's how to set up a player object. And in the next step, we are going to look at how to make him move. All right, so let's take a look at our inputs, our input scripts. There are a bunch of brand new input scripts that are very different from the simple scripts that we looked at in the basic module. They take a lot of different things into account, such as whether or not I'm attacking, or whether or not I have weapons or not yet. So I'm going to go to minimize some things just to clean this up a little bit. And I'm going to go to scripts, input scripts. I've put the input scripts that you're going to need inside Adventure Game Base. And you'll see I've got movement scripts here. That's what we're going to concentrate on first. We're going to bring in all of these. I don't think we're going to need some of these, but we're going to bring them all in anyway. So ones we don't need are light anyway. So let's take a look at some of them. So what I did was, these are actually ASM scripts that I can edit for movement, basic movement. And let's take a look at one of the directional scripts compared to the basic ones that you guys may have been looking at. Let's look at start moving player down. You see that there is actually a new macro, which is great, and that's facing. So I don't need to do a whole separate script to make him face a different direction. And this is great. I know somebody was making like a tank game, and you want to move, but you don't want to change which direction you're facing unless you're pressing the other buttons or whatever. And so this is one thing that's cool. The start moving macro doesn't actually make you face a direction anymore, but the face direction does. And if you look at the macros, it's actually pretty easy to understand. Start moving, which object do you want to start moving, and what direction? Move _ up, down, left, right, whatever. And then face direction, same thing, except instead of move, it's face. So this is a great way. And what's nice about this is if you're attacking, it can't move. So if you get the current action type, which is also a new macro, and it's attacking, which in this module 2 is attacking, if it's equal to that, it skips down to here and it changes the direction you're facing, but it doesn't start moving. If you want to not have your character change direction, if you're if you want to make it so he can't change direction until he's done attacking, which might actually be good for this tutorial, this ++ would go after the face direction. The face direction would go in between here, because then it would say, if I'm attacking, skip all the way down beyond this. I'm going to make it right now so that even if I'm attacking, I can still change direction. So if I'm attacking, jump down here. Great. And let's take a look at some other things here. If I stop moving, this is pretty much the same. Stop moving, and then just like move and face, we've got stop down, stop right, stop left, stop up. Let's align these real quick. Input. Well, I'm going to go to my input editor, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on main game input. I don't need a target. In fact, for none of the scripts at this point ever in NESmaker, you can put it to null every time. It actually doesn't matter. It's not actually reading this value right now. It's for something that we have planned for down the road. When I am holding right, I want to run the start moving player right script. So I'm going to select that and hit add script. When I'm holding down, I'm going to start moving player down. Add script. When I'm holding left, start moving player left. And when I'm holding up, start moving player up. Now, when I release right, I want him to stop moving right. When I release down, I want him to stop moving down. When I release left, I want him to stop moving left. And when I release up, I want him to stop moving up. So now I should have basic movement commands in place. Now I don't know if I've got all the animation in place, but let's take a look at this with my player actually able to move around this screen. And because we're using these scripts, these start moving and stop moving, and they all respect the physics engine that we have set up. So we don't have to worry about collision detection. It's already handling all that for us. So I'm export and test. And I've got my character, and now he's moving. Now I notice he doesn't stop when I want him to stop, as far as his animation. He still stops, but I want him to actually stop moving when I let go of the key. So what I'll do is I will put on the release events, main game, null. If I release right, I'm going to change to idle animation. And if I release down, I'm going to change to idle animation, same script. And if I change left, change to idle animation. And if I release up, change to idle animation. So now, if I let go of these keys, and let's take a look at that, this is going to change to idle animation unless he's attacking or unless I'm still pressing the key. Like if I'm pressing up and I let go of right, it obviously shouldn't stop animating. It should just change my direction. So it's going to check the controller, and it's going to see, hey, is the D-pad pressed, left, right, up, or down? If that is not equal to 0, that means if one of those is pressed, don't worry about it. Don't change to idle. That means I'm moving right now. Okay, if none of them, or if they're not pressed, am I attacking? Because if I'm attacking and I'm not pressing the arrow keys, I should stay attacking. I shouldn't change to idle. And that's what this script says right here. So let's take a look at that. And there we go, as I would expect. Very cool. So now we got a player that can move around the screen, and we can see the wall, stop him, and if he gets to the edge, he'll even go to the next screen. We already have bounds being respected. However, we don't have any screens, so we're going to get this blank screen, or even worse sometimes, all letters and numbers and stuff. So, okay. Great. So let's continue on. Let's finish setting up our HUD before we do anything else. So just to get the game screen looking sort of in its final state, I'm going to go to my pixel editor because we don't have any HUD graphics loaded right now. If I look at my HUD graphics right here, HUD tiles, you can see that it's empty. If we go to my base folder and I go to beta assets, go to graphics, I actually did supply you guys with letters and numbers. And here's the thing, there are lots of ways to organize this. You can change everything in this top row, and in fact you can probably make some modifications. A couple tiles that you want to keep clear in the way that they are. This one right here I would leave completely alone. Like I would actually leave all of this completely alone, from here all the way to here, unless you want to add something or change these, like maybe use this one for a apostrophe or something like that. But I would leave this generally alone. But this you could really change to anything you want it to be. That's where you're actually going to get a lot of flexibility. These you can change the way they look, but I would keep 0 through Z the same and make sure the punctuation is the same. And F5 for right now, that's this guy right here. Leave this alone. Leave it blank, because there's a couple scripts that use F5 and they're not set to the constant for blank tile yet. There's no way for you to set that, and it knows that F5 is a blank tile. So just leave that one alone, and you should be good to go. The other thing I'm going to do is this presumes a color. Don't forget, this will put it through color number 1, and technically this is what it would look like right here. And that's actually a really cool look. It would be really nice for a blue text box and stuff like that. We're going to use a fast load text box method, which doesn't load the box itself, just the black, which is a little bit faster. And and also again, we have that problem with this being a blank tile, and it's blue. So I'm going to go ahead and use my global color change, and I'm going to color change the background black. I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to save as, and I'm in my folder here, and I'm going to go to HUD tiles, save, and you can see now my HUD tiles look like that. And again, you're seeing them blue because they're through the black RGB. All right, so let's go to my HUD and boxes now that that's set up. And if I go to tiles, you can see now my graphics are loaded in there. And I can individually set what each of these is later. Like I said, for right now, I would leave everything alone. If you want to redraw what's here, great, fine, no problem. And if you want to make these look different, great, fine, no problem. If you want to change like what the user defines are, so maybe like in your HUD it shows you a sword. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make my user 0 a picture of a sword, and you're going to see why in a little while. So I've got a user defined, and all the rest should already be set up by default. If I want to check that, I can set numbers and start 0, and it automatically does 0 through 9. And I want to set letters, and I'll choose A, and it automatically starts there and goes A through Z. So that's a really quick way to do it. I'm going to go to user variables. Now you'll notice I already have a few variables defined. I've got my health, my score, my keys, and my money defined. That's what this module uses, and we've already set those up. This is the kind of thing where if you weren't using this module and you're using this version of the code base, you might run into trouble. Like if you try and load in your old project into here, you might not have the same variables loaded up. So that might be why, so if you didn't have my health and it wanted the variable my health when you ran into a monster and you never set that up, it wouldn't know what it is, and it would give you a error message saying, hey, I don't know what my health is. So that's why I said once you start to understand what a lot of these things are doing, you'll be able to make those modifications. It's not not a lot of work, but you probably don't know where to look yet. So I would stick with the module engines as we go for the time being, and then start exploring on your own as experiments. So we've got my health, my score, my keys, my money. We're not even going to use my score, but we are going to do a couple other things. One thing that we're going to do is we want to create a HUD asset. And this is the one that we're going to use to say health and keys and money. Let's see, we could say life, keys, cash. I like that. So let's make a new one and call it life, keys, cash. And I want it to be 4 wide and 3 tall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the word life. You know what? I'll make it 5 wide, so I can even put. And then I'm going to write the word keys. And then I'm going to write the word cash. Nice, it all fits so perfect. Great. Now I'm going to go to my HUD elements. And this first HUD element, I'm actually going to make that variable HUD, or that HUD asset. And I'm going to pick it, and now I can place it. And because we've got a HUD at the top, I'm going to make sure that this is a little bit lower, because that first row is going to get cut off by a lot of TVs and emulators. So now I've got the words life, keys, and cash that'll be drawn to the screen. Let's take a look at that real quick. And there it is, life, keys, and cash. And you can see how easy that was to set that up. Now it's a little bit trickier for me to add the variables next to it. But they're already set up. So I can see that my second variable is my health. It's already set up that way. So I'm going to use that here as my second variable, and it's going to be variable tiles. When you think of a health bar, you're thinking about a variable tile type. And what we want is we want a empty and a full tile. I'll tell you what, for my empty tile, I'm going to keep it empty. I'm going to make sure it's blank. For my full tile, I want a heart. Now, I could have made an empty heart graphic, and that would have worked too. It doesn't have to be hearts. It could be a bar. It could be a full bar and an empty bar. And the max value, well, I want it only to be 3. And that's my max value. And I know some of you go, can I make it more? You don't know how to make it more yet. Let's just stick with 3 for now. So life. And what I'm seeing is an empty. If I increase this, it's going to show me half empty and half full. And so really there's 2 more here, but I don't see them because they're showing me the empty versions of the tile. All right, so that's how I set up a variable tile type. The next one, if I look, is my score, which I'm not going to use at all. The next one is keys, which I am going to use. Oops, by keys. This, though, is going to be of a number type. And max value wants to know how many places. And I'm going to just put it to 3 places so it looks good. It looks like I must have missed my 0 here. Hold on one second. Tiles, set numbers, 0. That's better. And this is not showing me how many keys I have. In fact, at the beginning of the game, I have 0 keys. It's just showing me if I put 8, it would say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so this is set up, and what it'll do is when I get a new key, it'll load it in here. It'll automatically carry when I get past 9, and you'll be able to get 999 keys, hypothetically. The last one is money. We're going to do exactly the same thing. It's going to be a number, and it's loading my money. It's going to have 3 places. When you collect your diamonds or rupees or gold or whatever it is that we're going to use, it's going to draw it right there. Okay, the other thing that you can do is you can set an initial value. And I made my player's health 3 to start. I want this to match. I want my graphics to match. So I'm going to go to user variables, and I'm going to go to my health. What do I want my health to be to start? I want it to be 3. If I wanted to have keys at the beginning of the game, I could set it. If I wanted money at the beginning of the game, I could set it. By the way, you don't have to call this life and keys and money. You could call this health, and these keys could be data chips, and your money could be experience points. You can call these, whatever you want to. This is just how the adventure game engine by default uses things. The other thing is you don't have to use all of them. Your game is going to respect collisions with things, so they're gonna drop certain objects that give you cash, but you don't have to actually have it in your HUD. You don't have to use it this way. I'm just showing you guys the basics of what can be done with this engine by default. So now that I've set that to 3, I've set my health to 3, and I test the game, I'm going to see that I get 3 health drawn. And there we go. The other thing that I actually set up to do is that your character is going to get a sword and a crystal ball that shoots magic over the course of this minigame. We are going to put them so that they draw in the HUD, but we're not going to do that quite yet. So let's start by making some monsters and being able to interact with those monsters, and then playing around with some different tile types and screen settings. All right, we're going to look at starting to set up monsters and placing monsters on the screen. In Monster Graphics Banks, this is where we're going to do. If you remember what we did with the player, setting up a monster is exactly the same thing. It just uses varied tile sets instead of just one unique tile set. So I'm going to go to my pixel editor, and I'm going to open up. You guys don't have these graphic assets in the same place. They're going to be in the folder that I've provided for you, but you've got your adventure game graphics, and we want to load up the monster tile set, and we're going to load up 2 monster tile sets. We're going to load up monster 00, and I'm going to hit open, and we're also going to save that as, and we're going to save it, we're going to save it over monster 00 here, and we're also going to open up monster 01, and we're going to save that over monster 01. And so now we've got those 2 tile sets. If I look at my tile sets, you'll see I've got them loaded in my tutorial, in my Advent tutorial game project, and I can start making monsters with them. I'm going to get you started with this. I just want to show you it's exactly the same as a monster, as the game object. So like I want to make this NPC character. I would make him 2 wide and 2 tall, and I would just start going in and like this, etc., etc. I'm, rather than show you guys how to create it, he doesn't have any animations or anything like that. I'm going to load up my my character for this. I'm going to import my monster. You guys don't have access to this, but you can go ahead, and I'm going to show you the settings. So this is NPC, and he's already loaded, and he's already using Monster Palette 2. I just need to set up Monster Palette 2. I'm going to call this NPC. Now this guy was my green mage here, so he's going to have, let's see, green tunic. It's still kind of a normal looking face. It's that outside shadow, and I'm going to get rid of this tile right here. I don't like this. Yeah. Save that. Okay, so this is my helper NPC character. Let's take a look. You notice I only have the 1 animation, only 1 frame. I'm going to look at his object details. Let's take a look at how this is set up. I call this guy a red wizard. Now he's a green wizard. Let's take a look at how he's set up. First of all, he's an NPC type. He's not any other types. He doesn't need max or acceleration speed. Not sure why that was up, but we can turn those all the way down. Doesn't need hit points. His actions, he doesn't have any actions. His bounding box is down at the bottom. What you might want to do is you might want to extend this one a little bit beyond him. because how this is going to work is if your player is colliding with them and presses the B button, that's going to activate your text. So you want to maybe push that a little bit beyond him. So there's a bounding box that's a little bit beyond him. If you're in front of him and you press the B button, it'll say something. And I'm going to close this. Great. So now I have this NPC object. I don't have any NPC text yet. Let me save this guy real quick. Make sure that you save him before you exit, otherwise he won't show up as a possibility. So we've got a red wizard NPC. If I want, and notice if I hit save, I'm going to create a duplicate, just like with the tiles. If I want to edit the red wizard or the red green wizard, I would click on the red wizard. Now I notice save is gone and it's automatically updating changes that I make. Now this is an NPC character, so I want him to say something to me. I'm going to go to my text and I'm going to give him text. And I'm going to put this, I'm going to call it first. And I'm going to say it's let's see, what can he say that would be relevant but different enough? It's unsafe to travel solo. And notice you have these over here, which show you keys that apply. Now remember, I had the user 0 I set to be that little sword. So if I use the @ symbol, it'll show the little sword. So I'm going to have him say, have this, and then a picture of the sword, which is the @ symbol. And at the end of the text, most text strings are just going to end. However, there are a couple things that you can do. One is that you can trigger the screen, and we'll talk about that later. The other one is that it gives an item, and that's what we want to do. And the items that we have existing in this engine right now are this melee weapon and the projectile weapon. We're going to have them give you the melee weapon. Okay, so this guy is going to, when he talks to you, it's unsafe to travel solo. Have this sword. So that's my homage here. And now that I've got the text, I need to make sure that it's in a text group. And it is. That's the only one that I have. It's the only text that exists. So it's going to be all the choices in the group. When I go to Overworld, let's make a cave for you to. No, we're not going to make a cave yet. I'm just going to put him right here. I'm going to put him right here in the middle of the screen for you to go talk to. So in my screen info, I need to make a monster group to put this guy on the actual screen. So I'm going to go to monster groups. And this monster group, I'm just going to fill with all my friendly NPC wizard guys. And I'm going to call this NPC wizard. Save. Now I've got a monster group with all my NPC wizards on it. I'm going to go Overworld, go to my screen, and go to screen info. In here, you'll be able to choose the tile set that you want to use for your monster, what group, and now I'm choosing what color I want to use. And I wanted to use the NPC palette for this screen for monsters. So that's what I'm using. This guy's going to almost blend in with the background here because he's that greenish color. But I want the bad guy to be red, so I'm going to make him stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to hit OK. And now that I've got that set up, understand if you do not set up your monster group, you're going to get really weird results when you place a monster. You can place that guy by right-clicking. Let's move him down a little bit. Place monster 1. So these are the monster slots, not necessarily the monsters like from the group, but just like there's 4 different monsters you can place on the screen. These represent the different monsters in that group. So I had a wizard type NPC for all of these. It doesn't matter which one I pick. I'm going to press this one. And now if I walk up to him, I should be able to talk to him. So let's test that out. Let me also make sure real quick, I can see my text strings here. notice all my text strings use group 0. That's the only text I have. And in fact, if I right click anywhere and I put edit monster placement details, I can actually see this guy's going to say these words right here. So I can see literally what monster is going to say what, or what NPC is going to say what. If I export and test, and there he is. So now I can go talk to him by pressing the B button. It's unsafe to travel solo. Have this. And now I have a sword. And you'll notice at the top of the screen, a little graphic appeared of a sword. And that's because I already set up my my HUD to draw that, and I'm going to show you where I did that in a second. But now, I should have a sword when I press the B button, but I haven't added that input step yet. So let's first worry about this HUD here. Now, this is going to be a little bit of trial and error. What I want to do is I want to show that if I'm pressing the B button, it's around the sword, and if I'm pressing the A button, it's around my crystal ball that I could get. Quick trick. Let's say you want to have those to begin with, so you don't, you want to test your game. I can go to Project, Info, and I can give myself weapons. Now, the only two that exist in this module right now are these first two, sword, melee weapon. So I'm going to click on weapon 1 and click on weapon 2. The rest of this stuff doesn't exist in this at all. The only other thing on here that really matters is the skip start screen. So if I were to test my game now, I'm going to see if they both show up in the HUD. Right there and right there. And they're using the second subpalette. So this is one of the reasons I love FCUX. I can look at the PPU viewer. This is the first subpalette. They're actually using this one right here, these guys. So I can actually change this to different colors, and we're going to do that in a second. So I can get, maybe that blue should be a different color to make it stand out. Maybe the crystal ball. Maybe not. Maybe that's good. Maybe it should be like a lighter color blue so it stands out against the black a little bit. What I want to do is I want to put brackets around these and put like a B and an A right here, so I know, like, okay, this is what I do when I have the B button. This is what I have when I press the A button. Now you don't have to do this exactly like I'm doing it. I'm just showing you an example of what I know works with this engine. So I'm going to make a new HUD asset, and it's going to be called, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Brackets. Let's call it Brax. Should call it Brack. And this would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, then a space, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, actually that's way too big. It's going to be like this, and then a space, and then it's really only going to be that big. So let's pull it in. There we go. Now a little B here. Make that high. And that, and a little A here. All right. So, and then what'll happen is right here is where my sword will draw, and right here is where my crystal ball will draw. And I'm going to show you how to change that too in a second, and why that's drawing there. But before I do that, let's take a look at my HUD elements, and I have to find a free element, which the first free element is this user 5, and I'm going to say let's use a HUD asset, and which asset? The Brax, and I think it was about here. I think that's about where it was. Let's check and see how close it was, and then we'll move it if we have to. Now, because I set those two checkboxes in the info, they're both going to show up. I don't have to go get them. Nope, a little bit over. So let's move that. I think, let's see, was that enough, or was it? Yeah, I think that was it. There we go. Perfect. Now let's say that you want to change where these are. I'm going to show you a little piece of code that will allow you to change exactly where those are being drawn. And that's if I go to Project Settings, script settings. This is the first script we've actually really looked at. I can see there's one called Sprite Pre-Draw. And if I edit Sprite Pre-Draw, it pulls it up in my default code editor. I'm using Notepad++. I recommend you get that because you can save things to ASM and it will show you, it'll color code the ASM for you, so it'll make it easy to really read. But you don't have to. You could use a Notepad editor to make changes to this stuff. So this tells you exactly what things do and how to use it. I'm not going to go over it too much other than to say your draw sprite basically draws X, Y, what sprite you're drawing, what color you're drawing it at, and where it starts in RAM. And this explains how to define where it starts in RAM. So here it is. Draw sprite, X, Y, what sprite it's drawing, what color it should draw it, and its offset. And so the second weapon, X, and you'll notice X is a little bit further over on the projectile, on the crystal ball than it is in the sword. What tile you're drawing, X, Y, what tile you're drawing, what color is it, and the sprite offset. And to understand that better, you can actually look through this, and you can actually draw more sprites. Now, the only thing to keep in mind, you can only draw 8 sprites per scan line. That's a hard limit for the NES. You can only have 64 sprites per screen. So, you want to be careful that you don't eat into the space that your monsters or your players or your projectiles or that kind of stuff is supposed to use. But other than that, you can start using this area to draw sprites in addition to background tiles to your HUD. And you could even start to set up if statements. So like check a variable. If a variable is 0, draw this. If a variable is 1, draw that. So you could have it draw a bomb or the sword, depending on what a variable is, and things like that. So there's some really cool tricks that you can do really cool tricks you can do in order to modify this code to get it to exactly what you want it to do. So I'm going to close this, and now I'm going to turn off weapons from the beginning, and let's test it again, and let's actually go talk to that guy and get the sword. And then lastly, we'll make the sword work. And now you can see my sword appears. Awesome. So now let's actually make it work. And to make it work, it's actually pretty easy. If I go to Input Scripts and I go to User Scripts, Adventure Game Base, Input Scripts, you can see I've got one called Create Melee. So B creates Melee. I'm going to load all these in because I'm going to make use of all of them eventually. So I've got A button creates projectile, B button creates melee, and Start button starts the game. I'm going to go to Input Editor, and I only am worried about the B button right now. So main game, null. So when I press the B button, I create melee. Add that script. And let's take a look at that script real quick. So this is a pretty complicated script. It does a whole lot of things. One of the things that it does is it turns you into the attack mode, your player. So that way it knows that, hey, you shouldn't change to idle because I'm in attack mode, or you shouldn't be able to walk because I'm in attack mode. Think about Zelda. When you're walking and you attack, it stops for a second until he's done attacking. It also creates the weapon, and where it creates the weapon is actually pretty interesting. We haven't set up the weapon yet, so you can't attack with it yet. I want to talk about that real quick because these weapons are already set up. I went ahead and did it already. I'm using player, melee, player, projectile. Those first 3, that's what these are set to. So I'm going to go to melee, and you can see my sword right here. I'm going to use a new palette here, and I'm going to call this Game Objects. And I want to look at things like the projectile and these coins up here and the crystal ball and this. So this is where I want to set this stuff up. I like the sword as being white. I like having the white around these other objects. I know that I'm going to want yellow because that's a key. So I know that this is going to be like a bright yellow. And that red, not feeling that red exactly for the fireball. Although the yellow looks fine for the sword and this crystal ball here. Maybe a little bit more orange for the fireball right here. And my heart, that actually looks okay because the heart sort of looks like a reddish orangish. Okay, so that's good. We like that. This is what my sword is going to use. Now what you would do is I'm going to create two different copies of my sword, a vertical sword and a horizontal sword, because it's different sizes. And I don't want to waste 4 sprites in each direction if I can avoid it. So I'm just going to use these 2 sprites if it's vertical and these 2 sprites if it's horizontal. So basically for vertical, it would be too high, get these like this. And for horizontal, be too wide. I'm going to go ahead and just load up my sword vertical for game object number 1. And that automatically set the palette back. That automatically went ahead and, I made this 4 frames in size because I made the attack script for my player 4 frames in size. And so the way that I handle the sword going away is that they're set to the same animation speed, and the sword and the player animate together with an attacking motion. You could really get clever with that and make it like swing the sword if you want to get really, really into it. That's trickier. That's definitely an advanced use, but you could figure out how to do that. The only drawback of doing it this way is there is a microsecond delay between when the player is done with the sword and when it goes away. However, for this purpose, for this module, it makes the most sense. It was the easiest to implement for you guys to be able to do more stuff with. So I'll show you what I mean. There's 4 frames of the sword. It's just the sword out front. If I go to player and I go to attack left, or any of the attacks, you can see there's 4 frames and they're all the same. So it creates a sword. They have the same speed. So when the sword appears on the screen, it's the same time he starts attacking. The speeds are exactly the same, and then they go away. And if I look at my object details, here's what's happening. 1, these should all be down, should be down, up should be up. Those are the only choices that'll be available for the vertical sword. Details. It's a player weapon. When it hits the edge, it destroys itself. Otherwise, it'll show up on the other side of the screen. It still will for like a flicker, even doing this. And there's some better ways to handle that. I just haven't dug into that part that much. Also, the animation speed here is exactly the same speed as my player's attack in order for them to be in sync. And I said that at the end of its animation, it gets destroyed. So as the player animates and does the attacking script, the sword object is also animating, and when it's done animating, it destroys and gets rid of itself. And I set up the bounding box. And if I look at my script, you can see the first thing I do is there's 2 different objects I can create. If I am first checks to see what direction I'm facing, right here, and if it's not an up-down, it creates the left-right melee, and if it is up-down, it creates the up-down melee. And this is the up-down melee, and this is going to be the right-left melee. So let me create the right-left melee first. I'm going to do the same thing. So I could go through and I could create it. I'm just going to load mine. Game objects, import game objects, sword horizontal. So I'm just going to set the, there we go. So these are both set. Save that. Object details. I can go through same things, set the same way. All right. So now that will automatic. It's already coded with this. When I press the B, that's going to create this object right here. So if I turn these back on. Actually, no, I'll turn them off and I'll go get the sword. It's more rewarding. Okay. So I'm pressing B right now. You can see down at the bottom of the screen here. I'm pressing B. Nothing's happening. I talk to this guy. It's unsafe to travel solo. Have this. Now he's giving me the sword, and I can see it. It appears. And now, what about that? it's definitely working, but it's showing up in dramatically the wrong position. So this is why we wanted to use this and this for the sword, these first two. We have an old leftover Mystic Searches part of this tool that we're going to use to our benefit right now. We're going to expand on what this part of the tool can do eventually, and you could look at it to figure out how to write your own routines. We're going to create the offset for the sword. So I'm going to go to Game Objects, and if I just click on the Game Objects sort of main root here, I get this really cool interface where I can actually offset my melee or the second, basically the object number 2 and object number 3, I can set them up. So if I'm pressing down, I want my sword to appear roughly here-ish. And if I'm pressing up, I want it to appear roughly here-ish. Maybe a little bit inside the character because we're supposed to have that little bit of depth. If I'm pressing left, I'm not using this melee anymore. I'm using what was called the projectile source. So I'm going to, now it's called melee H. So basically, if you remember when I opened this as player, melee, projectile, source, projectile. I'm going to use the projectile source offset. Let's do that. And then right. And I'm just moving it in conjunction. Now, the things that we have intended for this tool, this part of the tool, is that we are going to be able to show different animations for the player in this spot, so you can line up like the arm, things like that, and be able to really control what object is calling what, and more than just 2 offset modes. There'd be 8 offset modes or something like that. Right now, we're just using what's already there. This is just a happy accident that this exists. So now that we've got our offsets in place, export and test. Talk to my guy. Get my sword. And it creates it at my offset. Awesome, awesome, awesome. It was that easy. All right. So still so much to do to make this a full game, right? The first thing that I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to make some new screens here. This is all great, but I need to let's make this guy sort of really in the woods here. Like, this is an entryway I can't go, and maybe, maybe he would have told me some stuff about, maybe my first character isn't this guy. Maybe my first character is somebody who tells me the story of the game, and I have to go into a cave and find this guy or something. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, let's do this. Great. So I'm going to get the sword, and I'm going to be forced downward. All right, so let's make a new screen. I can come out here and I could double click on this screen and it would make a new screen in bank 1 and I could start creating. That's great. But I could also just be in the screen and press the down button, the down arrow key, and I'm on the new screen. And one thing you're going to notice that's kind of neat is, let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. There you go. I can see the edges of the other screens. And in fact, if I press the plus and the minus key, if I press plus, I can see more of the screens around me. And I don't have any screens set up on the side, that's why I don't see them, but I could definitely see this one, which is going to help me line up collisions. So I know I need a collision here, and I know I need a collision here, and this would have been like this, and this would have been like this. I can hit minus to have this come back out. Okay, so now my collisions are lined up, and really don't forget this HUD is basically not even there. So this should be the bottom of this tile right here. And now the collision is lined up, so I don't walk on to the next screen and then get stuck. On this screen, I want to put some monsters. So let's block it in. And honestly, screen design would be much better if I was spending time on making really stupid screens. Let's leave a pathway this way. Let's leave a pathway this way. All right, so let's add some blocks in here, just for kicks, like this. Great. I don't like those. If you hit F5, it'll erase. Not really erase. It really draws with the first asset, which is essentially acting like an eraser. I want to add some monsters in here now that I can actually attack with my newly gotten sword. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I need to make a new monster. And I've already got monsters added. I already did this. I'm going to go to my first tile set, and I got this slime dude right here. I'm going to basically, you'd create him the same way, you know, 2 and 2, and then he'd start creating his animation. I'd make him 2 frames of animation. I'm going to load up mine, and I'm going to show you how I did them. Let's see, slime monster. And this guy is going to use a new palette that I'm going to call slime. And this guy was, I think I'd like to make him like a purplish color, or like something that really stands out against the grass. Shadow color, shadow color. And I don't know what I'm going to use this color for, so I'm just going to set it something there now. But yeah, so this is going to be sort of what my slime is going to look like. Look, if you notice, he's got 2 frames of animation. He walks like this. If I go to object details, let's take a look at what this monster looks like. He only has 1 animation, so I don't need to change any. He just has 1 default animation. I gave him 2 health, give him as much as you want. I made him a monster. When he hits a solid object, he turns around. When he hits an edge, he turns around. I gave him kind of a slow speed with a very slow acceleration. So he's going to increase very sluggishly, almost like he's a slug, like he's on ice or something. His actions, he's going to move in 4 directions. And then he's going to, when he ends that action, he's going to repeat that action. So he's just going to keep changing his direction over and over again. I do want to give him an animation speed. And I want to give him a bounding box. So there we go. Got this new monster. I'm going to save him. And there we go. And I'm going to make a new monster group. Oops. Want to slime dudes in there. And call it slimes. Go to my overworld, go to the second screen. Screen info. Don't forget, you can't place them until you pick them. Now, I only see my NPC wizard because I need to set my day tile set. I need to set the tile set to the one that has the slime in it. I'm going to give him the palette of the slime monster I just made, and I'm going to place monster 1. I'm going to place slimes. Place monster 2. I'm going to just place all monster A's because they're all slimes. It doesn't really matter. Now, there is one thing that's going to happen. And I'm going to show it to you, and then we're going to fix it because it's going to happen probably a bunch as you forget to do this step. These guys are not going to appear right away, and we're going to talk about why. So game rendered. Go talk to this guy. If I go down here, they're going to be there. Awesome, just like I'd expect. Oh, that's really validating. That's cool. I'm going to talk to this guy. Get my sword. Now I'm ready to go mess up some monsters, except they're not there now. Wait a minute, what just happened? They were there. Why aren't they there now? Well, let's talk about this for a second. So what happened in the overworld when you got that sword? It triggered the screen type. And the reason it triggered the screen type is because we don't want this guy to keep giving you that sword over and over again. In fact, if I get the sword and I go back to that screen, he's going to be gone. I'll show you. So I get my sword. Come here. They're gone. So's he. Where did he go? Oh my God. It's because what happened was when I get the sword, it looks at what screen type this is and it triggers it. So it goes to triggered mode. And you'll notice in triggered mode, that guy's not there. In fact, if I look at my triggered monsters, there aren't any monsters at all there. So I can't even place monsters until I define which monster should be there in triggered mode. Well, unfortunately, that's going to trigger all screens that have the same screen type. So what I'll do is I'm going to start like at the end here. I'm going to make this screen type I'm going to work backwards from 255. So I know that like the next screen is going to be screen 0. Like this screen right here is screen 0. So this is going to trigger screen 255 and all the other screen 255s. This is the only one. This one's going to be screen 0. Okay. So let's check that. Now I should be able to get my sword. That dude will go away. He won't be there again. I go down the screen and the monsters will still be there now. Come down here. Yay! And he's gone. And I'm noticing that I can attack them and they're dropping something. What are they dropping? So we've made a bunch of different droppables, and we'll take a look at this real quick. If I go to project settings, script settings, we've got a pickup for 4 different types of objects. And if we stretch this out a little bit, we can see we've got one power up that increases health, one that gives you your projectile weapon, one that is a key and it adds to your keys, and one that increases your money. Now, those guys that we just saw only drop health, money, and if they don't drop anything, they actually explode. So we need to do that real quick. We need to set these power-ups up, at least the health and the money and the explosion. So let's do that real quick. And those are in order right here: health, charge, key, currency, except that's not necessarily what they're going to be called. Health is going to be health though, and I've got the heart right here, and it uses the second subpalette, and it's right here. But I'll tell you what, you would add it, and we're going to do some settings. I'm going to go ahead and load up mine. Import. Again, you guys don't have this. If you're looking for this, I'm having you create it. But this is I'm just showing you how all my settings are set up. So I'm going to open this. I've got my heart. I'm going to use the game objects palette for it. I'm going to go into object details, and animations are all default. This is a pickup power up. That's what's going to trigger those scripts, is to make sure it's a pickup power up. None of this stuff is relevant. What is fun is you could make use of this and then use these values in other ways for this object if you were really clever about it. And when we get into tips and tricks beyond the basics, we're going to show you how you can maybe do that stuff. With actions, notice there's no actions set up. The only thing that's really set up is a bounding box around this guy. I'm going to save it. And it's my health pickup, and I'm also going to set my currency pickup, and the same thing. That's the uses the second sub palette, and it uses the game objects, and it's this little diamond here. You guys feel free to make your own graphics, whatever. I'm going to import my currency, and again, just make sure that you're putting them in the right places here, because this is what the code is looking to see. This are pickups 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I look at object details for currency, we're going to see the same thing. Details all nulled out. Pickup power up. Actions all nothing. Now, if you wanted, like, when you drop the pickup, it moves around the screen and you have to go get it or something, you could give it a speed and direction and things like that if you wanted to. But obviously, I just want the coin to stay still. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to close this and hit save. And lastly, this first effect, I'm going to add both of my effects right now. I'm pretty sure. Let me see something real quick. Import after currency. No, we're going to add this guy right now. So we're going to skip over effect 0. We're going to go to effect 1. And we're going to load this little poof right here, which is really hard to see unless I switch over. This little poof right here. This is the top left corner of an explosion. Little minor magic poof thing. I'm going to load mine and we're going to take a look at it. There we go. So what I did was I made this the top left corner, and I just flipped it horizontal, flipped it vertical, and then flipped it vertical and horizontal, and I did that. And then with the second frame, I did that with this, and then with the third frame, I did that with this, and then with the fourth frame, I did that with this. And let's take a look at the object details. With the details, it has no object type. This does not collide with anything. But it does have an animation speed. I set mine to 2, and I did give it a bounding box just so it sort of shows up in the right place. This is what, if a monster doesn't drop a pickup, it's going to drop a poof. I think it makes a poof either way, actually. So now let's go and fight those monsters real quick, and don't die because we haven't set up death yet. So. Get my sword. Go fight the monsters. And now you can kill them, and you notice. Oh, and there's a heart. And I got it, and you heard it. Now let me see if I can get another one. And I'll get hurt, and you see my health went down. See if I can get one of them to drop a heart real quick. All of this stuff is going on in the engine underneath, and we could set this. We could set all the things to do different things. This is what the scripts that are defined in this module do. So I don't want you guys to have the impression this is what NESmaker does. Okay, so there's a heart. I get it, and you notice that my life went up by 1. Awesome. I still haven't gotten a diamond yet. Let's see if I can get it. Oh, and I died. I did the one thing I said not to do. I died. All right. We haven't set up death yet, so now's a good time to talk about death. Now, one of the problems with death in a video game is it can mean so many different things in different video games. And so how does this game handle death? Well, we're going to do something very similar to what we did in the beta. Instead of creating like just restarting the game, which is one thing we can do. We just restart the game. But I want a visual cue that you died, and I want an audible cue that you died. I want the music to stop, and I want I'm going to have the game restart now. So this is going to be my death object right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it an animated version of my character. He's going to look just like my character. He's the same colors and everything. And he's going to spin around and then, poof away. And then when he poofs, then that's when the game's going to restart. So I'm going to load mine and show you how I did it. I'm going to call it Death Monster. Okay. And so this is, notice I have spin, explode, and gone. And spin is an animation that's just do-do-do-do-do-do. And explode is an animation that's and gone is nothing for 8 frames. So now if I look at my object details, I've got 3 animation types: spin, explode, and they're all explode, and gone, and they're all gone. Go to details. It is no type of monster. It doesn't do anything. Actions. Okay, this is where we're setting this up. I made it spin fast. When the animation's over, I made it spin a little slower. When that animation's over, I made it spin a little slower. And when that animation's over, I made it change. Its animation type is explode. And when that animation's over, I made it advance to gone. And when the gone animation's over, you'll get like a second or two, and then you reset the game. If you want gone to last longer, you can put it more towards slow. If you want it to be faster, move it to 1 or 2. Make sure it's not on 0 though, otherwise it'll never actually get to the point where it restarts the game. So now if I die, I'm not even going to get the sword. The death script tells it to create this object, which is why we just saw the top left corner of his head, because that's all the object was before we set it up. So now if I die, there we go, and the game starts over. So now I can get my sword. And I can kill them, and they can kill me, and now we're starting to get something that feels like a game. Awesome. So we got monsters that can hurt me. I got monsters that I can hurt. I can get cash. I still haven't had anyone drop any money. I think they're more likely to drop hearts, which is why I probably haven't seen any money yet. But they do drop money sometimes. There we go. And now I got money. Okay, cool. So now we've got that. We've got some monsters. Let's make a warp to an underground screen or something. So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to set up another screen. And again, I'm going to match the collisions of the screen above me. Hopefully you guys can see what it is that I'm doing. Oops, what I want to do is actually this. There, now it's matches. Let me get rid of this. Let me make this a little bit of a winding road that you've got to come around. Okay. And again, that's shift to get it off to the edge here, like this. There, now I got to come around, and over here, this is where I'm going to put my stairs. And I do want monsters in here, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to day monsters. I'm going to set up tile set 1. I'm going to use my slimes. I'm going to set the palette to slime, but instead of placing them, I'll place them for starters. I'm going to place monster 1, place monster 2, fine. But I'm going to edit their placement details. And instead of placed like here, I'm going to make them random. And now it's going to choose a random one of these monsters, and it's going to place them in a random position inside that monster box that I set up over here. Remember when I set that up and I said you can define the size of that? It's going to pick a random place inside of this box that doesn't have a collision, and that's where it's going to set up these monsters. Every time I come on the screen, it's going to actually be slightly different. I'd like to have some method of showing that there's random monsters placed so you don't think you forgot something. I don't have one right now, but if you think you did set up monsters, look at edit monster placement details. And if you see that random is grayed out, that means it's chosen random. So rather than have to talk to that guy, I'm going to give myself the sword, and I'm going to come around and I'm going to show that I'm going to make sure that those monsters appear at different places when I come down to the screen. Okay, they did. And they're definitely showing up at random places. Awesome. Now I'm going to get all the way over here to this stairwell, and I'm going to try and go in, and it's going to break. And I go nowhere. Okay, so let's talk about where you want to go. Why do you want to, how do we get somewhere we want to go? I go to screen info, and I've got some information. This box right here is telling the game what screen are you going to warp to. And you can actually choose it to warp to the second map too. You don't have to. If you leave this unchecked, it's going to warp to this screen on the above world map. If you click it, it's going to jump to that screen on the underground map. So let's start there. I'm going to go to Underworld and I'm going to pick a random screen. Now, this is no good because this doesn't look like an underworld. So I'm going to real quick make some tiles for an underworld. I'm going to go to my graphic banks and I'm going to go to assets. But instead of using tileset 0, I'm going to use tileset 1. And instead of using the overworld, I'm going to use the underworld. I didn't make a palette for the underworld. So I'm going to go back to palettes. Remember we did this in the beginning. And I'm going to choose another palette. I'm going to rename it Dungeon. Change a couple of colors, just a couple so I can see the silhouettes of assets. I'm going to right click, assign to group, Underworld. And now I can see Underworld has a palette too. Now if I'm in assets and I choose tileset 2, I can choose Underworld Dungeon. I don't have any graphics here. We never set up any graphics in tileset 2. So, or did we? Maybe not. Let's see. So if I go to Pixel Editor and I go to Open, no, we did not. So look in your beta graphics folder for this graphic right here. I'm going to load it up from here, and it's this. And I'm going to save this over the top of my second background tile set. There we go. And now, if I go to Assets, tile set 1, there's my second tile set. Underworld, Dungeon. Okay, so now we need to start making this appropriate colors here. I think that we're going to want grays for the floor, like that. And I think we're going to want like blues or purple, something very dark for the walls. I could make it like a brick red. That might look cool too. Yeah, let's do that. Let's make it like a brick red, like that. So that's that. We got staircase coming up. I do have this this wood doorway. So let's do this. Let's make a wood doorway against a red brick wall. And it's good for now. So let's start making the assets. Floor is going to be walkable. And there's like the floor shadow. And then there's the ceiling tile. This should be solid. And then there's the wall left, solid. Wall center, solid. Wall right, solid. The door is actually going to be a locked door. So we're going to save that as a locked door type. And then we're going to save the stairs as warp to screen. And we're going to save the block as a solid block. And these are to help me make the room a little bit more interesting. We're going to choose this as a solid. This is just the edging of the room. Oops. I'm going to name that stairs. Wall V. Let's go back to this and call that wall H and hit update. Okay, so now I've got some underground tile sets here. And if I go to my underworld here and I pick that screen, I'm going to tell it I don't want to use the main tiles from tile set 1 or 0. I want to use tiles from tile set 1. And I want to use the underworld palette for the dungeon. That's what I want to use for the screen. So now I can start creating. And I'm just going to make a really simple room that I can copy and paste. And honestly, you can get way cooler than this. trick about the screen editor, if I hit escape, so now I've got no asset selected, I can hold shift and click and drag to select an area. Copy by hitting Control C. Come here. Control C. And now I can put my mouse somewhere, hit Control V, and it'll paste. So sometimes that's a quick shortcut. I'm just going to make a box of a room right now. And all left, all right, all center. And then we've got this cool shadow that gives it some depth a little bit. It's kind of neat. All right, cool. I need some stairs to get back up to where I was coming from. I'll put them in the corner. So now I need to determine, okay, if I come into this room, where does my person start? And that's right here, warp in screen location. If I move my mouse, I can see numbers up here, looking for tile X and Y right here, tile info. Let's put my character like right here at 1312. So I don't want to put him right on the stairs, otherwise he's going to warp right back up. So my warp in location was 1312. Now what screen is he supposed to be warping to? Overworld 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 4, 7. So if I go here, he's going to warp to screen 4, 7. And what screen am I warping to here? 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I go here, say, okay, what screen are you going to warp out to? 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2, 3. And I'm warping to the underground from right here. And then where am I warping in? Let's again put him sort of on the diagonal. So he's going to appear at 6, 7. If I look up here, 6, 7. So warp in the screen location is 6, 7. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the music for the underground. So go to screen info. And you've got songs. I'm going to make it this tragedy, which is a little bit more of a somber sounding song. And let's test this real quick. Already got my sword, so I don't need to talk to him. Get past these guys. Music changed. And now I'm in the dungeon. Go back upstairs. And now I'm out. And it looks like there might be a slight issue with the random script looking at the point of collision. Maybe it's not respecting all 4 points exactly right. So sometimes he's appearing stuck to the wall. We'd have to tech that a little bit. But awesome. So now we have, our dungeon entrance, and we can escape the dungeon, and it's got different music. So now let's make it so that there are some monsters right here in this entryway that you've got to beat in order to get past into the next room. So I'm going to open up a thing, but I'm also going to go to Assets, and I'm going to get my second tile set. And I'm going to use this, but I'm going to make a different colored one. So instead of gray, I'm going to use, let's see what would look good here. Something that really stands out. Like that, and then, so like this. Sure, why not? And we'll figure out what to do with the rest of this, but here we go. We're going to use this. And this is going to be if I defeat all the monsters, I can actually get through. So this is what we call a monster block. Or monster lock, I should say. And we're going to call this Monster Lock Dungeon and save it. And the thing about a monster lock is when the monster lock goes off, it also changes the it triggers the screen, just like what happened when I got the sword. So we want to make sure that we put the monster, like if we put the monster lock here, Hey. Sorry. If I put the monster lock here, it'll be solid until I defeat all the monsters, but I want to make sure that it's a different screen type. So I use 255, I'll maybe use 254, and I'm just working backwards from the top for these screen types. And the last thing I need to do is I need to define a couple monsters. I'll just use the same monsters for right now. Slimes, slime, okay. And I'll just place 2 slimes in here. There we go. And now when I defeat these guys, this will open. I'll be able to go off and come back. These guys will be gone. If by chance I just want the door to be gone and I don't want the slimes to be gone, what I can do is I can go to triggered state right here, and I could go and I could set day triggered monsters to the same monsters. I could also set them to like harder monsters if I want, or whatever. There's like, I could do different things with them. I can make more of them. Let's do that. Let's place more of them in the room. If you've already unlocked this room, it's all of a sudden harder. There. Now it's going to be harder after you've triggered it. So this is normal, and this is what it's like when it's triggered. So let's test this. Okay, so let's get rid of these monsters. And we noticed that that one went away. They should have both gone away, so let me check that real quick. What may have happened is I may have, let's see. Okay, so let's go and test that monster block real quick. Coin, a heart. All right, get rid of these monsters. I can see that my monster block did go away, and the collision is correct. Like, I can walk through both of these now. So we got to back all the way up to where I started talking about triggered. Okay. So yeah, we can have a different set of monsters for day and for triggered. And if we want this block to stay gone away, then we want when it's triggered there to be no monsters in this room. So that way, when you walk back onto this room, it says, "Oh, there's no monsters. Let's trigger those," and there won't be any monsters here, and the triggered blocks go away. So let's test that real quick. Now, graphically, this is going to end up being a little bit funny, which we're going to fix in just a second here. And this is an example of what I was talking about. Random got them stuck. We'll have to look at that code a little bit. Let's kill both these monsters. And you can see the collision went away for both of these. The graphics didn't. Well, we're going to fix that in a second. But I can see that still in the monsters. All right. So let's see if we can fix those graphics here. And I'm also going to start a little bit closer. So I don't have to start all the way from there. I'm going to start from right here. So now I'm going to pick up there. This is a great tool for testing. I'm going to change the special tiles, which now we have under tiles. And how this works is for this right now, we've got basically the grassland, and we've got our underworld, tile set 1. For tile set 1, we can define, okay, what's under a slash? What's under a secret? What's under a stop tile? What's under a boss barrier? And they don't necessarily mean what they say they mean. If we look, this is what we're looking at right here. We're looking at checking the monsters to see if there's any monsters still in the room. And the monster check loads under slash. So we want to make sure that under slash shows what we want. And when this goes away, we want to show under slash right there. So we want to show just plain ground tile right there. So let's test this out. And now we can see it went away. Now it's going to stay the same color, unfortunately. All right, so after a tad bit of tweaking of the code of solid wall objects, here we go. So now what'll happen is, oops. this is a solid wall, but if I beat all the monsters, plays a sound effect, flips the trigger for the screen and makes these go away. And if I go back, the triggered screen had no monsters in it, and that's what gave me this. Now you notice the music got happy again, and that's because I can actually set the music for my different states. So if I want it to be sad when after I've defeated all the monsters and it's triggered, I need to make sure that it uses that same music at night, or I'm sorry, no, sorry, for triggered as it does for a normal day. Night cycles are not observed in this module. So let's try that one more time with the music, and it'll still go to happy when I go to that screen to the right, that 0 sub screen. Let's get this guy. There we go. And there we go. All right, so that's cool. So now we've got this thing. Let's make it so that over this way, I can go this way. There's actually I'm going to do this too. I'm going to add a wall right here. It looks a little bit better. I'm going to add a wall right here. I can actually go off to the left over here. And I'll make the same sort of thing. Get these tiles, go around the outside. And unfortunately right now there's no way to just paint the values with the click and drag. You have to actually click for each edition, but it doesn't take that long. So I'm going to go ahead and put walls across here, this guy here and here, this guy here, the shadow down the wall, make it look good. Right in the middle of this wall though, I'm going to put a door. This is a locked door, so I will need a key to enter it. And again, I could set up triggers in this room with monsters or not. I do want to set up the tragedy sound. Now, with this, don't forget, if I kill these monsters, it sets a trigger. So I need to make sure that if I don't want this to be triggered, I need to make sure it's a different type. In this room, actually, you know what I'm going to do? If you go to, I can actually copy and paste this. So I'm going to go to the map, Control C, Control V, and now I can edit this, and I'll just edit the things that I need here. Now the goal is I can only get to this room if this is untriggered. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave this open, oops, like this, and over here I'm going to close this off. And I'm going to close this wall off here. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is I'm going to come over here because it's available to me, and I'm going to see there's a locked door and I can't go through it, and then I'm going to come over here and realize I've got to kill these monsters to come over here where there's going to be a key. I can get the key, and then I'll be able to go through that door. So that's what I'm setting up right now. Let's set up the key real quick so I can do all this and show you guys. In order to set up any objects in the game, I'm going to have to create a tile group. Now, I have not set up a key pickup yet. Again, it's going to use the second sub palette. It's this right here. It's actually too wide. Again, I'm going to import this game object. It's something I've already created, but you guys can figure out how to set up the art assets by now, I hope. Oops. You go to monsters, and I have one called key somewhere. Key monster, okay. There we go. And again, it's going to use this guy, and I'm going to save it. And if we want to look at the object details, again, it's a pickup object, no actions, no bounding box, I can have the whole thing, and if I save it, I can see right here, it's key pickup. So again, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the third pickup of this group right here. So it's pickup number 3. If I looked at my code for pickup number 3, I would see what happens when I get the key. So I'm going to go back to Underworld, sorry, and I want to place the key in here, but I can't do anything until I place a monster, and I don't have to put him in the game at all. But if I want to, I can now place a key pickup, and there's a key in the middle of the room. So I can place a heart in here too if I wanted to, a key, a diamond, whatever, any of my game objects. So export and test this. Oh, and you know what? Before I do this, sorry, I'm going to set the music. So I'm going to go to screen info, and from my music, tragedy. Oh, right, because I already set it on the screen that I copied. Okay, so now what should happen is come in here, can't go through that way to the left or to the right. Can come to the right, left, but I see, oh, that's locked. Okay, so now I can come over here and I can mess up these monsters. And when I do, door opens. I can get the key. I forgot to set the screen palette. You can see my keys went up. Now that I've got a key, I can come back over here. One thing that I want to do here is when I get this key, I only want to get it once. So getting this key acts as a trigger too. But if I trigger this, then what's going to happen is this room is also going to trigger because they both use screen type 0, and this one uses screen type 0. And I don't want to trigger that other room until I actually unlock the door. So 355, 354, let's do 250. 554, let's do 253 for this room, and let's do 252 for this room. And you don't have to work backwards like this. You can work up as well. I guess I'm trying to keep them as far away from 0 as I can, 0 type screen. But you could just as easily go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So now if I test it, you'll see if I come over this way, I have a locked door, can't get in. And if I come over here, I can beat up the monsters, which will open up that. Now I can get the key. I have to change the sub palette there for that screen. Come over here. And now I should be able to use this one key I've got and unlock this door. And I do. Now that's not the right tile. I don't want that tile under here. Let's take a look real quick at the code. What is it trying to replace this with? If I look, it wants under secret. That's what this under tile is for a locked door. So if I go back and I go to my graphics banks and I go to special tiles and I look at under secret for tile set 1, under secret, you can see I don't have anything for under secret. So what I want is I want it to be this open door. And so now that I've got that set, if I go back in, beat up the monsters, get my key, now when I unlock that door, it'll be that tile that I want. Now I do have it right now set to make it go to, if I look at the script, for handle check for triggers, and I can get there by going project settings, script settings, handle trigger, check for triggers, handle triggers. I can get here. It says, what am I going to change the collision to? So if I change it right here to 0, 0, I'm changing it to a fully walkable tile. Now, what I might want to do is I might want to change that to a walk tile, and this explains it right here. I might want to change this to a warp tile instead. So unlock door is a warp tile instead of a walkable tile. So if I look at my assets and I look at this, that'd be 0, 1, 2. So if I go back to that script and I change it to 2, now it's a warp tile type that'll be underneath that door. Now it depends on if you want it to just be an obstruction or you want it to be a door like this. If it's a door like this, then I want it to be a warp tile, so I looks like I walk into the door or into the staircase. If I want it to just be a block like one of these, then I would want it just to become a walkable. So it's going to be up to your game design. Defeat these monsters. Over here, get the key. I gotta change that again. Come over here, unlock the door, and now it'll take me to a blank screen. Oh, what did I do wrong here? Oh, that. So in order to make this become a warp tile, like if you had like a gate here, and this was just an obstruction, and then this disappeared, then you do want it to be just turn into a walkable tile. And there's two places that we have to set this to change to a warp tile. One is on screen load underneath, so that's going to happen in the check for triggers, and we can get there by going to project settings, script settings, triggers, handle triggers. If you edit that, you'll see. And this is, if it's 0, it's just going to turn into a regular walkable tile. If it's 2, it's going to change into a warp tile. And again, if you want to know why, if I look at my tile types, my warp tile is tile number 2. But the other place that I have to change it is when I actually run into that tile with the key. So if I look at project settings, script settings, and I look at tile collision with that type of tile, that was the locked door type, I hit edit, and here it happens here too. Change tile collision. What type of tile do you want it to change to, and what graphic do you want it to show? So again, here I want to change that to 2 if I want this to be a warp. If I just want it to go away, again, I could leave that at 0 and that would be fine. You might get it either way. I'm not sure. You might, in your code, it might be 2, it might be 0, but those are the two places where I can go to change that. Last time, we'll check and make sure that this is working the way we want it. Oops. Look at that diamond. Come over here, get the key, come back over here, and unlock this door. And it took me to nowhere because I haven't set where this room should take me right now, right? If I want it to take me warp out to somewhere, that's what I have to set this door to do, which I'm going to do in just a second. But a couple other things to do first. I could also put this right against the wall and again make it just go away if that's easier. Let's make this I want to use this as an entry point right here where I am right now. So 3, 5. So screen info. If I enter this screen, I'm going to warp in at 3, 5, and let's make me go to this screen right here, which would be 0, 1, 0, 1, 2. So that would make me go to 1, 2. So that would make me go to 1, 2. And again, I'm just going to copy this, paste it, and then just start making changes here, like change the brick wall and change these guys. And I need some idea that there's a door here, and this is where it gets really confusing. This, this Zelda had that's one of the reasons they had that really weird perspective where it looked top down, but then your character was kind of flat. How do I show that there's a door going down here? And that's one of the tricks. It's one of the tricky things. So for right now, I'm going to put an open door. So I'm going to make a new asset in tileset 1. This is going to look really bizarre, but I don't want to spend a lot more time on this. So I'm going to warp to screen. I'm going to call this a new asset, door. I'm going to save new. It almost feels like this should be upside down, if I was in this screen. But for right now, I'm just going to put it, let's see, where was that? Right here. And what I'll do is I'll make the wall do this. It almost seems like that should be upside down. Maybe I should make an upside down version of that graphic. And then this is where I want to come in. So this is 312. 312. And I want to warp out to 1, 3. And what this room is going to be is this is going to be a super important room. This room is going to actually have where I get my projectile power up. So that's this guy here, which I haven't brought in yet. It's not going to be a charge power up. That's not how I'm going to use this anymore. Instead, I'm going to use the game object subpalette, and I'm going to get this crystal ball here. And I'm going to open that up. You guys, again, do not have this. You guys, I'm letting you build these now that you've seen how to build graphics. This is called Get Magic. Okay, so I'm going to make this game objects. There we go. And just a couple of things. I did set up an animation here. It's just one animation. So what I did was I gave it a speed, and its animation is just those 3 crystal balls. And then it kind of chills. So it's going to start here and go, whoa. It's going to look like it kind of pulses. And what this script is going to do is if I look at, let's save that. If I look at pickup 1, 2, so I'm going to look at pickup, the second pickup. If I look at pickup 0, 1, I'm sorry, 0, 1. Edit that. What it's going to do is it's going to change this weapons unlocked variable. This first bit here, this is when I got the sword. That's what it did when I talked to the NPC. The second bit is what's going to give me the other weapon, and it's going to play this power up sound effect. And really, that's the same thing as going into project info and clicking on this right here, except I'm doing it procedurally as the game goes on. So if I go to my underworld, screen info, I need to set a monster group. I don't need to put a monster in here. I could make him say something else and give me this if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to place Get Magic, and sorry, you should see. Save that. I just set my start screen here, and when I get it, you can see now I've got magic. Now I haven't made it so I can shoot yet. That's the next thing I've got to do. But if I do go through this door, oops, You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to say I want it to warp me to underground there, because if I don't, it's trying to warp me to that screen on the first map. So I want it to make sure that it warps me to the underground map there. There we go. And same thing. I want to make sure that this warps me to the underground map. There we go. Okay, so now these will go back and forth. And before I test that again, let me make it so I can shoot. So I've already got the create a projectile. It's very similar to the create melee. And what's nice about this is it creates the projectile at the end of my imagination instead of at the end of my animation, rather than anytime I press the button. That's really important because you don't want to like clog the screen with your projectiles, because it's going to slow down the game. So this is a nice trick to create a projectile. It doesn't create a projectile as soon as you press the button. It creates a projectile, and then you can't create another projectile if you're in the shooting state, which lasts for a second. So just a little trick. I'm adding that create projectile script when I press the A button, and it'll automatically, because of the script, only work if I've got the weapon. So I'm pressing A, nothing happens. Now something does happen, although it's not what I want to have happen because I haven't set up what a projectile is yet. But at least, oops. So that's set to the wrong room. Underworld 0, 1, 0, 1, 2. So set this to 3. Nope. Let's select the right screen. So what must be happening is as soon as I get to this screen, I must be colliding. I'll move that up. That should help. I must have been colliding with that as soon as I entered the room. All right, so now I'm going to set up my projectile. We haven't done anything with the projectile yet. I'm going to end up using game objects, and it's going to be these right here, these guys right here. And I'm just going to make a 2-frame animation. So I'm going to import my projectile. There we go. And if I look at my object details, it's a player weapon. It's very fast, full acceleration speed. When it hits a solid object, it destroys itself. When it hits the edge, it destroys itself. Give it a fast animation speed, but there's nothing of consequence going on in here. Okay, so now I've got this projectile, and if I look at the code, it tells it to create. Let's look at it. If I look at the code, basically it's creating object at the player's position, object number 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, and that's why it's creating the projectile. And if I told it to create 4, it would create a heart. If I told it to create 5, it would create this magic pickup, etc., etc. So now the projectile should work, and I should be able to start at the beginning of the game, unlock a door, get my projectile. There we go. Now I've got my projectile weapon. Make sure I can, yeah, there we go. So now I have a melee attack, and I've got a projectile attack, and I can shoot these monsters. Again, you know, it's just really good practice to make sure that that when you get something like that from a room, you make sure that it's on its own. Let's make sure that these are both tragedy, and make sure that these are both on their own. So like this was screen 252. So here's another, this is another screen that has its own trigger, so I want to make it 251. Now if I go back to that room, it won't be there. And maybe when it's triggered, I have monsters in here instead of, you know, something good that I'm supposed to get. So I left the room and I got the good thing. Now if I happen to go back, there's really hard monsters in there. Okay, so let's continue to explore a little bit with what we can do with this. I've got my projectile. I've got, now I can leave this part of the forest here. And maybe the problem was I want to go this way, but I can't because there's these blocks in the way, right? And these blocks are breakable blocks. And the only thing that can break through them is my projectile. So when I break them, I'll be able to get through to the other side. This is probably a bad practice because breaking a block does not, if I remember correctly, trigger the screen. So if I put blocks all the way against the side and I try and come back, I'm going to be stuck in a block. So with breakable blocks, I probably want to do something like this. Just now when I come on the screen, I'm going to end up here. Even that is a little precarious. I would even do something like that. Now I've got plenty of room. I know what I have to do here. So I'll change this screen a little bit. I think I can get through there, no problem. So now I can break these blocks. And now it's pretty obvious that I've got to go this way as well. So let me make a screen over there. And I'm going to start here. And I won't be able to get through there. I'll have to go get my projectile. Can't get through there. Don't have my projectile yet. Can come through this. And I know I've got to get that key. That door's going to be locked if I go over there. Okay, get the key. Come back over here. Keep forgetting to change the game object palette for these rooms. Okay, now I can go and I can break those walls. And I got to change the music here on the screen for the triggered state. Okay, now oh, you know what? I placed the wrong object there. So I'm sorry. I placed the regular block when I meant to place the breakable block. So instead of having to go all the way through that again, I'm going to just give myself from the start. I know that whole thing works out. I'm going to fix that screen so the triggered state plays the tragic music. Now I should be able to break through those. Sorry, I put the wrong block there. Now, you'll notice the undertile is weird. So let's fix the undertile for that. Again, special tiles. The undertile for the overworld for that type of, when you break it, it's the stomp type. So what do I want to show up? How about just regular ground, I guess? It's going to be, the only problem is going to be that color. It's going to look weird, but that's okay. At least, I'd probably create something else that wouldn't be so overt or weird, or I'd do a better job with palettes that shared colors. There's no reason, I guess, that, yeah, I'd have to come up with a better solution. Right now, it uses the same attribute that's already placed there. It just changes the tile. So let's see what happens. Let's make sure that that works. So when I break that, it's going to turn into the white version of the grass. It's going to look like snowy grass. And I guess that could be debris. Why not? There we go. And so you can see how that works. And when I come back, yeah, it doesn't trigger. So now we've got a whole cool game thing that we've got going on. We've got we start, we don't have anything, we get our sword, we come down, we can fight a few monsters, we get to here. The only way we can get through this door here is is if we go in here, which takes us underground, and we have to kill these monsters to be able to get the key to unlock this door, to get the spell, and then the spell is what actually allows us to get over into this area. So, I mean, you can see the way that we're making sort of a non-linear, having to go back over your tracks. It makes the game seem a lot bigger than the 4 or 5 screens that I've created. So let's add a different type of monster here. And let's see. I'm going to add a couple of sentry type statues around this, and this is going to be obnoxious. Maybe I'll just put 1. So it's going to be this sentry type statue, and what I'm going to do is open Monster Graphics Banks, go to Monsters, and I'm just going to import my statue monster. There it is. And this uses a subpalette that I haven't set up yet, which is black and light gray and dark gray. And this will end up looking like a statue. It'll look kind of like this. You can kind of see what it'll look like. And if I look at my object details, there's no animation to this guy. If I looked at my details, it's a monster. However, it uses some interesting action step flags, and we haven't really talked about these yet. First of all, let's look at the actions here. It sets a timer at the end of the action. It advances, and that shoots at player. And at the end of that action, when that timer goes off, it goes back to first, and then it's going to wait. If you wanted it to wait longer, you could just make another step where it would advance. When the timer goes off, then it would shoot. So that's up to you. You'll see the speed of it and judge for yourself what you think. But it's got these these action step flags, and what these are doing, though, this is again module specific. I can write in code what these do. I can do a check to see was it checked or was it not checked, and then determine what happens as a result. This module has this second checkbox is no player collision, which means that I can't run into him. He's not going to hurt me if I walk into the statue. But also, he's immune to my weapon. I can't hurt him at all. I can take as many shots as I want. It's just not going to do anything. So that's, and again, I've got a bounding box. I'm going to hit close, and I'm going to save this guy. So now I've got a statue in there. I'm going to add a statue and a slime, just so you guys can see statues and slimes. I can start mixing and matching monsters on the screen. So when I go to my overworld and I go to this screen, I'm going to place 2 sentries here. So I'm going to go to screen info, and my day monsters tile set 1. I'm going to choose statues and slime used this, and statues used this, and I'm going to name that stone. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to place 2 statues. Place monster 1 is going to be monster A, which in that group was a statue. And I'm going to place monster 2, monster A, which was a statue. So they don't have to go like in order, like monster 1, monster 2, monster 3. That's not it. This is monster A, B, C, and D. And then I'll put monster 3. I'll put one of the slimes down here. So what's going to happen is these guys are going to shoot. Now, what sucks is this is going to be solid. We want this to be solid. We don't want to walk through it. And we haven't created their projectile yet either. What I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the attribute under them, and I'm going to make it solid. So I'm not actually changing the asset at all. I'm just taking that one square and making it solid, so I can't walk through these statues. So that was just a little trick. I can actually modify the attribute and modify what collision that tile has underneath there. All right, so the next thing I've got to do is I've got to make a monster projectile, and I've already made one. Again, I would just use these two, and I'll show you what I did with it. I have a monster fireball, and it uses game objects subpalette, and you can see it just does this. It's the same exact thing as yours, except in object details, it is a monster weapon, moves pretty fast. When it gets to the solid or edge, it destroys itself. Actions. Now we're going to talk about this. This has two different actions. You'll notice this one never gets to the second action. So we're going to talk about why and how we use that in a second. This is actually creating, actually we should talk about it now. Let's take a look at the shoot towards script setting. So if I look at AI, I look at shoot towards player. This is the important line of code right here. Well, what is it creating? Well, this is the X value of where it's creating something. This is the Y value of where it's creating something. This is the object it's creating, which that's what we just set up. We just set up this game object, which I'm going to save. We just set up this monster fireball game object. However, this right here determines what state it's going to be in, what action state it's going to use when it's created. Most of the time when we make monsters, we have them start at state 0. We're going to have this one start at state 1. So what that's going to do is, if I look at this, state 1, it's going to start here, and again, it's going to stay stuck on state 1. It's going to ignore main physics, which means it's not going to move using the standard physics engine. It's going to set its speed and direction, and it's going to go because it needs to chase after the player. It's not using the regular inertia that our physics engine uses. It's also going to ignore solid collisions. So this is going to make it shoot right through trees and things like that, and this is up to you. But I mostly do this because remember how I put that solid object under our statue? If I didn't check this, it would destroy itself as soon as it hit the solid object right there. So I'm going to just say, you know what? It's fine. It's going to go right through solid collisions. So now that we've got that set up, that's what the monster is going to create when it shoots. Let's check it out. Now we got monster shooting at me, and I can't go through them. Let's see if I can demonstrate it. Yep. And I died. All right, so now we've got sentries guarding us and statues. That's a totally different type of AI. We've got that monster that moves around and just sort of aimlessly moves around like a dumb Goomba type thing. So we're working towards getting to our boss. There's not much left to do here between now and then. So really, it's just a couple different monsters and a couple different types of AI. So I'm going to set up a screen. I'm going to just copy one of these screens. I'm just going to paste it anywhere. Notice they don't have to necessarily Control C, Control V, oops, Control C, Control V. There we go. They don't have to be necessarily directly correlating, like, you know, this screen is nowhere near this screen. You can set them up however you want. In fact, I could have built all these on the overworld and that would have been fine. So I'm going to do this real quick. And let's reset all placements. And I'm going to actually just make it so I can go this way. Not even going to block it off here. I'll do this. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little maze here with, this shouldn't be called stairs, this should be called block. So I'm going to create like a little maze here. This. There we go. And I'm going to do this because I'm going to put some precarious monsters going back and forth between here and here and here and here. And that's a new type of monster. I'm going to go to my monsters here. And I'm going to open up trap. And trap uses tile 1. It uses the 4 corners of this guy. So I'll show you how I set that animation up. And again, you don't have to create things the way that I'm creating them. This is just the way that I'm creating them. He would use the stone, and it's just each one of these is flipped, just like the explosion. So normal, flipped horizontal, flip vertical, and horizontal of this graphic right here. If I go into object details, this guy is a monster. He's got fairly fast speed, full acceleration, reverses his direction when he hits solid or edge objects. And what this guy does is this one's going to move left and right. So this object is going to move just left and right. And what you're going to notice is he's immune to the weapon. You can hit it with the weapon. It's not going to do anything. So it's never going to recoil. It's never going to do anything. And bounding box setup. Okay. And I'm going to close that. And I'm going to duplicate that monster. I'm going to call this guy statue up down. Oh, shoot. Sorry. I meant to do this. Sorry. Import the trap. Hopefully I didn't break everything. Import the trap dude. And I have to save it. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate trap. There we go. And now trap up, down. And if I go into object details, instead of moving left and right, I'm going to have this guy move up, down. It's going to behave exactly the same way, just going to move up, down. And I'm going to make a monster group with traps. Oops. Tile set 1. Trap and trap up, down. I just have to remember that it's trap up, down. Call this traps. Save it. Underworld. So I need to set my monsters here to traps. Set my subpalette to stone. Place up, down was B. All right. And left to right was A, I believe. So this guy go back and forth. This guy, oops. There we go. This guy go up and down, ding, 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 ding. This guy go back and forth, bing, 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 bing. And I'm gonna export. Let's start my character on the screen. Be a little closer. Actually, it's fine. It's close enough. Oh, and you know what I never did? I never actually linked the screens. So, oops, let's make sure that this is way over here. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A. So 10. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 7. So if I got my overworld, I want to say, where do you want to go out to? I want to go to 10, 7. And if I come in, I want to come in at 8, 9. Or, yeah, 8, 9. So if I come in, I want to come in at 8, 9. And I have to go to the other screen first. Where's this one? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 7. So this guy, screen info warp out, takes me to 6, 7. And warp in screen location is going to be 12, 13. 12, 13. Okay. I think I set that all up right. I think my counting was okay. Avoid these statues. Whoops. Oh. Ah. Oops. I got to warp to underground. I'm getting tired, guys. I'm sorry. With this, I need to tell it to warp to underground. And let's try that again. Ah. There we go. And now, so now I've got this, time challenge to get past these guys. Awesome. So we've got a new type of AI that just kind of rows back and forth. I can make them move faster or more sporadic if I wanted to, I could even have, you can have something move that fast and then change direction to only 4 directions that fast without the acceleration and have that sort of mechanical like movement. There's only a couple things left here that I wanted to show. One of them had to do with, let's take this, copy it, paste it, and let's see more. I'm hitting the plus sign so I can see where those collisions are. There we go. And so I'd come up here, and I'm just getting rid of this stuff. And I'm going to get rid of these monsters, reset all placements. I want to show you 2 more monsters. One of them is going to be our boss. All right, so let's just put some, just to make it a little bit interesting. And I'm going to go to monsters, and I'm going to load, import my iGuy. So this guy's kind of fun. He uses, can he use one of these? Let's see. I mean, I guess you could use NPC. It looks kind of weird. Slime. I guess you could use this. This is fine. So this guy, he's a little bit wacky. He has a couple different animations. He closes his eye. He also has his eye closed, and then he opens his eye. And he's only vulnerable when his eye is open, and he's very small, so he's very difficult to hit. This would be a great kind of monster for a monster block type scenario. So if we look at what happens, he's got 4 different types of animation, and he's only ever facing one direction, so you don't have to worry about directions with him. Details, he's got 4 health. I'm going to put that down to 2 just to make it easier to beat him. He's a monster. His speed, he accelerates very slowly, like he really swimmy. I'll make him move a little bit faster. Reverses direction when he hits the edge or solid. His actions, okay. First of all, he's immune to weapon when he's opening his eye. So when he starts the game, he's opening his eye and he starts moving in a direction. He's going to slowly creep up. And when his animation of opening his eye is done, he's going to advance to the next frame. Now, he's going to move in 8 directions. And when the timer goes off, this is the only time you can hit him. His eye is open. He's moving in 8 directions. And when his timer goes off, he advances his action. Now, he's immune to weapon again. He starts closing his eyes. He starts to stop moving. He slows down, basically. And when he's done closing his animation, he's totally stopped. He's got no action. His eyes closed. He's immune to the weapon. And when that's done, when the timer goes off, he goes back to the first. So, make sure that the animations have a timer. Awesome. Bounding box is set up. Great. Okay. So this is a very different kind of monster. going to set him up. Eye guy. And I'll call this eye guys. And of course, like I showed before, you can mix and match these. I'm just making things easy. So I'm going to go to Underworld, go to this room, screen info, day monster, and I'm going to want eye guys in here. And I'll put, actually, place one, but I'm going to go to edit monster placements, and I'm just going to make 3 of them appear at random. Hit OK, and then 3 of them will appear at random. And let's just start my guy here. Place monster, or place player, I mean. Export and test. Those eye guys you can only hit when there's eyes open. So they are obnoxious because if I go and try to hit them when their eyes shut, it just bounces off them. So, you know, these would be great type of monsters for if you had a monster block and you had to defeat them in order to get by. It's obnoxious, but that's, you know, that's the type of challenge that you want in an NES game. So last but not least, let's add our boss in here. Our boss is another kind of cool AI. Copy. You got to just hang on each screen when you go to copy it a little bit longer. And I'm just using this as sort of a tournament style to show off the monsters. I got one more type of monster, and he's got a cool sort of thing too. I'm going to load him. And this is boss. Let's see, boss monster. And this is, he uses 2 different palettes here. He uses one palette up top that is, let's see, it was like a yellowish and just black and red. He kind of looks creepy that way. And on the bottom, he uses the next palette down. And I had him using like a more of a black and a red, same red, and a pinkish color for his hands, like that. So it kind of looks like he's holding a staff right there. You know, he's got his hands are a different color. Okay, so with this guy, he's got to stand, disappear, reappear, and invisible. So let's take a look at each of those. Disappear is, he goes like this. And reappear, he goes like this. And invisible, he's like this. And let's look at his actions here. So he's got 4 different animation types. He's always facing forward again. You can get a lot away with that a lot in NES games. It's great to have monsters that change direction and, you know, change their facing direction. But honestly, you get away with a lot of forward-facing monsters only in these 8-bit games. I made him move fairly slow. I'm not even sure if he ever moves. Monster, gave him a health of 5, solid and edge, he reverses his direction. So this is how this AI is set up. He starts with his standing animation type, which is just him standing still. And he moves in 8 directions. When the timer goes off, he advances. Now he disappears. He goes to the disappear state, which I showed you guys, and he stops. So he starts to slow down. And when that animation's over, he disappears. And notice I can't hit him at that point. And don't forget to set your animation speed for any animation that's, or any step that's dependent on animation to advance. So then he's invisible, and it's a timer-based thing. And when the timer goes off, he advances in action. Notice I can't hit him again. Okay, so the timer's there, and now he teleports. He's still invisible. I still can't see him. He's using all black sprites like this. So I still can't see him, and he changes to a different spot in the screen. When the timer goes off, it advances. I still can't hit him. And now he shoots at me. He's still invisible, and he shoots at me. and and when that timer goes off, he advances, and then he does the reappear animation, and he starts moving in 8 directions again. And when his reappear animation is done, it goes to first, which is right there. So it's an interesting AI. He's basically going to move and then disappear and then shoot at me from he's a teleport, shoot at me from a teleported location, and then reappear. So this is definitely this is the evil sorcerer. This is the evil character here. I'm just going to make a boss. Now I could put the boss and other monsters on the screen if I wanted to. Call it boss. My underworld and screen info, day monsters, and this guy's got tile 0 boss. And we want to make sure that we set up, I didn't even name them, but there we go. That's what I want it to look like. Okay. I'll put them in this room. Let's take a look at what this boss looks like. Get past these guys. Oh, whoa. Got 3 of them there because I never deleted the other guys. I copied and pasted this screen, but I never deleted the other guys. We don't want 3 of these monsters, that's for sure. Let's deal with just one of them. I have fireballs kind of coming at me from all over. So I definitely have some more intense boss music playing right here, So he disappears, now he teleports, and he reappears. And I can only hit him when he appears, so I gotta wait to see where he's gonna shoot from, then try and line up. Such a sad boss music here. One more hit. Thought I only gave him 5 hit points. Maybe I gave him more. And I died. Anyway, you guys get the idea. Let me make sure I only gave him 5 hit points. I think that he might have been on his last hit point there. Yeah, just 5. So anyway, so now we really have a cool little game. I'm going to add a couple of things. I'm going to add a start screen. That's a neat little start screen. I would add an end screen. I didn't have time to make one. For the start screen, we're not actually going to create it in the tool. It's actually already created. There's a great tutorial online about how to create start screens and special screens in Shiru's NES screen tool. That's a free software. I'd advise you looking into that, definitely. And so where that is if I go to beta assets, graphics, beta assets, NESmaker start screen files, there's the adventure start screen. And we can see that there's a CHR file here. And what we need that CHR file, and we need to know where that name table is. So what I do is I go to our CHR viewer, CHR file. This is the file that the NES actually reads, but we know that our tool needs it in a bitmap file. So I'm going to load the CHR file, which was in beta assets, NESmaker start screens, adventure start screen, and that's the CHR file right there. And I'm going to export this to graphic assets, our advent tutorial, start screen. And now it's overwriting the start screen with this. And so when I go to special screens, I'm going to minimize a lot of this stuff. Go to start screen. I'm just going to make it black. So I can definitely see it's there. And let's see what colors it was. I think it was orange. and like a darker orange and like a really dark orange, and then it was like a green, darker green, darkest green. I'm pretty sure I could have that backwards. That was for this area right here. Okay, and now I'm going to go to special screens and I'm going to import the name table file. And that was in that same folder that was in beta assets, NESmaker start screen files, adventure start screen. There we go, adventutorial. And I'm going to use for the beginning the song, but without. I'll use Roaming About. It's a happier song. It's a brighter, happier, cheery song. Now I'm going to go to info, and I'm going to not skip the start screen. Now I haven't told it what to do. I haven't told it what to do, how to get from the start screen to the main game yet. That's the last thing we got to do right there. If I go to export and test. Just to make sure that the start screen loads, and there we go. And right now, it's still showing our sprites at the top of the screen, and so we don't want it to do that. So what we can do is, I'm going to fix that real quick. This will already be fixed in yours. Pre-draw needs to only, let's see, load game state. Don't. Skip drawing item in HUD. Okay. So I think that should make that go away. Okay, so you won't have to worry about that. It's already there. What I did is I told it if it's on the start screen to not draw that. If we had other special screens, we'd have to account for them too, but right now we don't, so that's easy. The last thing, earlier on when we loaded all those input scripts, we did load the start game script right here. So we are going to go to input, start screen. So this is going to be an input when I press the start screen, and target's still null. And the script I want to run is start game there. So now when I'm on the start screen, I press start, go ahead and start the game. And this is going to load me right wherever the last time I set the starting screen. So in that last dungeon, which is obviously not where I want to start. So now I can play all the way through my boss, and I don't have a win screen. I don't have something that happens when I actually win, but I think that's going to do it for tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my player, and I'm going to play through this whole thing. I'm going to get rid of my weapons, and I'm going to actually do this the way that I'm supposed to. I'm going to export and test, and let's see what this game looks like. I'm going to turn the music up so that we can actually hear the music now. And I'm going to not talk. I'm just going to let the game play. are. So the thing that happened was these are set to the same trigger as another screen. So I need to make sure that these don't have a trigger associated with them. So these shouldn't be, these don't have any triggers. So let's do that. Okay. So here we go. Let's test this game out in full. I guess the last step here is to, is to see how this plays on a cartridge. That's the part that is the most interesting. So I've got this white cartridge. I'm going to throw this on the Kazo flasher right here. And I'm going to go to Test, Make Cart. And you can see that it is flashing right here. It takes about 18 seconds to flash to a cartridge. And when it's done, this will close. And now I can take this cartridge of the adventure game I just made. And I can pop it in my NES, and I don't know if you can see my NES all that well. This is actually a retro USB AVS. It is a NES that upscales to HDMI, and it's awesome. It's got a built-in Game Genie and all kinds of cool stuff. And there's the game that you guys just watched me create over the last couple hours. And hopefully you guys can see it actually playing on a real system. So that's the first wedNESday tutorial. I'm exhausted at this point. Thank you guys for hanging. I hope that this was helpful. I know I rushed through some of the asset creation stuff. If you are confused about that, definitely refer to previous tutorials, look at the Getting Started with NESmaker videos, and hopefully this gives you all kinds of ideas of the things that can be done with this adventure game module and NESmaker.